let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, Advisory Committee, calling it to order at 1:03 p.m. So welcome. Switch my screen. Let's see. Okay, so the agenda is on the screen for you. We do have quorum. Everyone is here, all our 5 committee members plus our board liaison. Is everybody okay for the recording of the meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect, because
How
it's
about
recording. And introduction of our committee members, and then we'll get to our guests. Okay, so my name is Laura Van Gratz. I am the chairperson for this committee. Start over here.
Bob Hilligas.
Steve Jacobs, board liaison.
Keith Kaiser.
Pam Corendi.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a guest with us, former chairperson.
Jim Cole.
Is there anyone else? I don't see anyone else. Oh, wait, we got Augie.
August Flimsy's on the television. Hi, everyone. I'm taking notes.
Okay. Approval of agenda. So here's the agenda in front of you. Is there anything that we need to add to it?
Yeah, I only had one question, and I think the footnote explains it. We have MO2 under new business, and then you have it down for follow-up.
Right. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
Should be,
Otherwise,
if I remember. No.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. We will be using Robert's Rules of Orders just during the times of our meeting where we need to vote on anything. But if everyone is in agreement, we'd like to suspend Robert's Rules for the duration of our meeting so that our guest, Jim Trummel, can comment when he feels like it, since he's been an important part of this committee in the past. So is everybody good with that?
I don't know about what he feels like it.
He's here, so. But, so yeah, so, all right, so we'll be informal until we need to actually officially vote on anything, okay?
Good.
So the next thing on the agenda is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. The last meeting was,
There it is. I make a motion to approve it with the exception it has the wrong date in the title. Should be February 10th.
Whoops, I can fix that and send it around.
Can you fix that, Augie?
Will do.
all right. Is there a second for the motion to approve?
Second.
Or, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected or amended for the date? Please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, thank you. And then Augie, whenever, if you can, re-email me the clean copy with the corrected one, then we will get that sent over to Michelle and the team to get it uploaded onto the website.
I
Okay,
will.
all right. Public comments. I don't think we have anyone other than Jim as a guest. Do you have anything you would like to share at this point?
This is a non-substantive comment. The number of drafts in process, and we seem to be in the draft season right now.
Yeah.
There's a provision in B01 on the attachment that in the origination of drafts, it calls for them to be dated, red line markups. If you look at the drafts that are in circulation now, none of them are dated. I think you'll find that if people start putting a date on a draft, it's going to make it a lot easier to keep track of whether you got the right thing in front of you for consideration. And that's not simply this committee, but in particular the board of directors. For example, I would anticipate that M01 and M02 are going to be modified at some point in time from the draft that originally went to the board a couple of meetings ago. So I suggest some attention be given to that when I'm speaking about drafts in this committee or any other committee for that matter, that the word get out that you need to be dating the draft, simply putting a piece of paper out there with red line. Now, I mentioned the board. It's the director who is submitting a draft to go on the agenda and in the meeting packet is really the control point. And the directors who are going to bring as liaison or as individuals, or for someone else, that's the control point. I think that needs to be known, and whatever other dissemination may be appropriate to committees, for example.
Right.
That's mine.
It would help because I mean, we feel like we're trying to figure out what's due, what's past due, and all of that because there's so many of them, and which ones are the most outstanding, that need to get updated first. It because there's so many things, documents that our particular committee deals with. It would make sense if we had an easier way to pull up and say, oh, okay, here's when this one was a red line, and then we know, oh, somehow it fell through the cracks and we need to get back to it.
Yeah, it's standard good practices for drafts. I mean, we should be doing it. Everybody should be doing it.
If you put the date in a header or footer, it's on every page.
Yeah, just revised or just the date, so it's a current date. And it was like that for a period of time, but it's slowly disappeared.
Well, I said, drafts are coming from many locations other than this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would have solved your problem, Steve, questioning which revision are we gonna look at it?
I have a lot of problems, but it would solve that one. Have I mentioned my small desk?
I was gonna say that, but I thought, is it getting old or? No, you went there.
All right. Well, I don't see any other anyone else on our call that would be considered public comment, so we will close that out. Chairperson's report, if you look at the bottom of the agenda, this is where I document what I have done. I didn't update it with my stuff from last night, but I have been emailing Michelle Ross from the OPA staff, to make sure that our agendas and minutes for the website, especially for our meetings, our previous meetings on 127 and 210, have been posted to the website. We also had requested and noted that the videos of those two meetings were not on the website. They are now. So when I wrote this, at that time, the videos had not been uploaded yet, but I did just check them the other evening and they are both there. I did not watch them. So because they're starting the recordings early and remote, I do think we need to be able to request that someone edit it to remove the half-hour waiting time, before we officially call the meeting to order. I thought that stuff was being taken out before it was posted, but obviously Bob said it was not. So we may need to revisit that with Michelle and Josh and all of that team who upload all that. I have no control over the recordings. It's whoever sets up the Teams link, which is Michelle.
So you can't start or stop?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not, even though I thought originally I would be able to, but it looks like it's being set up to automatically record as soon as it is open. So it's a little glitch. We're just going to have to work through it. But I'll revisit that with them. Because that on Saturday's directors meeting on the 18th, I spoke with Linda during that time and told her that the recordings were not up from those previous meetings. That so she was going to help do that. I also signed that day when I was there the clean copy of CO4, I believe it was. She had that. She did not have the other one that we were trying to, that I was trying to sign, that it wasn't ready or something like that. So I noted I did attend the directors meeting in person on the 18th. The next one will be March 18th. Okay. So that is my update. Steve, now we give you the opportunity to give you kind of an update prior to any of the discussions that we'll have in the old and new business section.
Okay, well, just, I went back through sort of what's pending, I guess is the best way to put it, in preparation for the March board meeting. And what I have in front of me is I have to prepare and submit when the call is made for items for the agenda, a motion to move on M05, which is the animal control revision, B07, which is petitions, or is petitions, I should say, and F03, which was the financial reserve account. Those three have all had first readings and in January, so they are ripe for board action. I'm not anticipating any particular changes, but and then I have for charging documents to bring up at the next board meeting, B02 rules of order for the board meetings, B06 indemnification policy, and B05 conflict of interest. Again, I'm not anticipating those would create any particular issues, but I would. Those are sort of ready to go. I think we both need to sign. We need to cross Jim's name out, put my name in, do all that. My goal is to take off these atrocious red marks all over the government. I feel like we're taking baby steps, but we're trying to get as many done as we can. So that's sort of where I'm at, pending whatever else the committee brings up that's ready to go. Those I think are ready to go.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Moving on to unfinished business / status updates, because I feel like that's what some of it will always be, but I noted on here that B01 had its second reading and that the second reading was completed and approved at the February 18th directors meeting, and that M08 also had its second reading completed and approved at the February 18th directors meeting. Okay, and I took them off the, down at the bottom under adjournment, the items that we have been keeping kind of like a follow-up on the agenda page. I took those off then since they both had their second reading. Okay, just to keep the confusion down on what we're still looking for. Then the B03, which is the meetings, I do have that one. If I can find it in my. Pulled up. Maybe not. I might not have that one pulled up. Let me see if I can.
Sorry.
1 second. Or we can come back to it. My issue is we have way too many of these. Oh, doesn't look like I have a PDF of it.
That's the one you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the meetings.
Are you gonna, is that the one Jeremy provided the input and feedback on?
Yeah, I think that's correct. One of the notes that bounced back and forth at some point indicated that that was the case. Now, this has already had a first reading.
This
Okay.
red line of B03 yet?
No,
Oh,
Because this one
So
hasn't,
now I
right?
should have B03 up there.
yeah, that's it.
yeah, that's the
Okay,
one.
that's it.
Well, it'd be nice if it had a
Is there-
date on it, so we,
So is there anything that we need to finish discussing on this?
Put a date on it.
Well, let's see.
I get a question on it. Based on the document you sent out, Keith.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
Okay,
Or
yeah,
do you
that,
want me to,
yeah,
I have that up there too.
Yeah, so this is one of the questions that came up last time, and we were saying we needed more time to dig and review and kind of figure things out. This is just one of many websites that talks about this stuff. It's interesting. There's more rules and laws out there about audio recordings than video, because audio recordings are based on wiretap, because it's old
Oh, yeah.
existing wiretap
technology.
But basically, what it says there, that first paragraph, scroll up just a little bit. Right there under audio recording laws in Maryland. In the United States, there's 12 states where audio recording cannot be done without the consent of every person in the conversation. Maryland is one of those states. Now, what it does go on to say farther down is that this can be satisfied by a notice or a disclaimer
Mhm.
that if you participate in this meeting, it's going to be recorded.
Mhm.
And if that is not acceptable, then don't participate in the meeting, something like that. You don't have to go around the room and everybody do that, but you do have to provide notice. And particularly when we're talking about providing someone a link
Mhm.
to a meeting, it seems relatively simple that there would be an accompanying notice that says use of this link
Mhm.
constitutes consent to audio recording.
And Teams automatically tells you when you first log in, if
Yeah.
the recording's already started, that it's in process.
But my issue still is vetting these people. And I can't remember if I CC'd you guys on my email to the board about surveys. The survey that's going around about the sign,
Oh, I don't.
there's a problem with that. That survey's not written properly. And so it's not going to collect the information properly.
Right.
And so I wrote an email to the board, and after I thought about it, I wrote another email to the board, and Colette very nicely responded to that. But the bottom line is, keep this from Keith Geiger. If we in this community are going to be using surveys on a regular basis that are then going to subsequently be used to influence the board's decision regarding expenditure of funds or changes to our community,
Mhm.
we need to have some way of knowing who filled out the survey. You can't just put a link out there in public and let everybody,
You
In
don't
the
know if they're
world.
actually,
complete it.
yeah.
Right. It needs to be the opinion of members, right? And I don't care if we collect the opinion of renters. It just needs to, something in the survey would have to indicate if you're a
That they're
renter
from
or
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I thought about that some more, and it still, for me, it goes back to the fact that all members have a login
Mhm.
on Ocean Pine's website.
Mhm.
Member login, it's up in the upper right-hand
Yeah.
corner, and they put it there for people who wanted to pay their assessments
Mhm.
online. And that's how you do it. You go up there and you log in with some password they gave us, and then you can pay your assessments, right? So it would just seem to me that the easy way to vet people is that the link
Put this.
is in there.
Mhm.
So you'd have to log into your account in Ocean Pines, and there's the link.
Yeah.
And
You
so,
agree or not, period.
right, and because you had to log in with your authorization as a member, you're pre-vetted,
Right,
because you couldn't
Because
even
you
get
wouldn't have
to the link
right, yeah.
unless you were a member. right? And it seems like it could be the same way with these surveys. If the survey is going to be sent out, trying to gather the will of the people, so to speak, the link could be provided in that member's login so that only members can get to it in the first place, as opposed to sticking it on Facebook and letting,
Right, anybody
yeah,
who don't need. to
all
live
of
here.
Delmarva fill out the survey.
Yeah,
Right, people are filling that survey out that don't even, know about that Ocean Pines is an HOA community, they just,
Of course
oh,
they
it's a great
don't.
idea to have a sign, yeah, whatever. So anyway,
Really? Are that many people that interested?
have you seen the membership in ROC?
Yeah,
There's a
I
lot
was
of
gonna
spare
say.
time on people's hands.
Okay,
yeah,
Oh,
I'll
yeah,
back off.
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of people.
I have
that
more
just-
things to do than that,
Yeah, there you go, there you go.
That's the problem.
Yeah, there are other people who don't,
I guess.
yeah,
But
sadly.
again, though, it makes sense for us to know that it's being, the survey is being done by our
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
and not just anybody who happens to live or work in Ocean Pines, that they really should have a vested interest in completing it. I'd like the idea of doing the member login. I'd have to figure out and go back and find some paper that had the login on
It
it,
comes with your bill. So when you get your annual assessment, there's a little note in there that says, if you'd like to pay online, go here,
Okay.
yada, yada,
Yeah.
yada. Because most people who don't use that or have not used that feature don't even pay attention to
Right.
that.
When I'm looking
That
up
would
stuff.
solve- That would solve the problem for logging in for meetings, the annual meeting. If there already is
Well, let
identified.
me,
And the reason I bring it up is because it would seem to me, if Ocean Pines was going to take some sort of approach like that, that this would be the document where potentially language about how that would, the mechanics of that would be.
well, let me, couple of things. One is, I think any question about how we call those who respond to the Survey Monkey, which is the company, Survey Monkey polls that Josh and his office puts out. I don't know, but I'm assuming Josh had some controls in place. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, that any of the polls that he's done several based upon the amenities. There was one on aquatics. I think there was one on rapid sports and all that. I don't know how much weight they carry one way or the other. They help the advisory committees. But I would think to get to that question, you'd probably need to forward a question on to Josh. I mean, I guess it has to come from you through me. And I don't know that it even falls within the parameters of this committee, but I have no problem in raising the question.
Well, just on that point, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, real quick. So this particular survey for the sign, according to the posting on Facebook, the board requested the subcommittee to survey the membership on this issue. And they claimed that's why the survey was developed and then sent out.
Yeah,
So at the request of the board, which means to me that the board then would be influenced directly by the outcome of this survey. So that's the reason I brought that up. I had never seen that particular language before.
I would love to turn the microphone off for a second. But suffice to say,
Well, the one I saw.
this particular survey is being done to address some long-held views of several board members that, I'm guessing, in all probability, will not change anybody's opinion. So I would suggest it's not critical one way or the other, but we'll see what happens.
The one board meeting I attended, actually, there was two people who were reporting that were liaisons like you are, and whatever they were doing, they immediately referred back to a survey that had been done, and that's why they were doing what they were doing. So
Right.
that one board meeting that I went to, I assumed the surveys were important.
I think as to the different advisory committees and the roles that the board members play, I don't disagree.
They're a great tool.
I agree.
I would put this particular survey in a somewhat separate category.
Oh.
And that's all I'm suggesting.
The reason I ask is I never seen it. I don't do any of the public websites. I don't believe in them. I just, so I stay away from
Well,
everything.
it's on the Ocean Pines website or what, unless it's come off already, but it's on the Ocean Pines.
Well, and the link was published in the, there's a weekly email newsletter. If you sign up for the email newsletter, that comes out. It was like a weekly summary of
Oh,
what's
the
going
week,
on.
Okay.
Ocean, the week in the Pines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One.
Yeah, so the link was in there.
Okay.
And I think it was also in one of our local papers.
Probably in the
Is that?
Ocean.
The Ocean Pines, was it the Courier?
The
Oh,
Bayside, not Bayside, I'm losing the one that our reporter has.
I think she's the Gazette.
Yeah.
Gazette.
Well, it's the same, it's both the Bayside Gazette and whatever the other one is. All-
Yeah, I've seen it in like 3 or 4
Yeah,
different.
she reports for both.
Okay.
Published, yeah.
So putting that aside, to
Okay.
get back to the larger question for just a moment. Again, beyond my level of knowledge, I don't know the best way to determine how you vet people so that they can participate virtually. But the language that we have here in 3A report board not less than 30 days prior to the annual meeting that the equipment or system is able to ensure that only qualified members of Ocean Pines may be counted toward a quorum to vote and to fully participate in the meeting should suffice. In other words, the difference, what I'm suggesting to you here, and this is something that's frankly been beaten into me as a new board member since the first orientation meeting, is board deals with policy questions, general manager deals with operational questions.
Right.
And I would suggest to you
That the mechanics of that is
that
operational.
that language in
Yeah.
3A is operational in nature. And he has to report to the board that he has satisfied that requirement. Whether or not the committee feels and should recommend to the board that there should be something further along those lines, that's fine. But and the issue of whether or not there's a disclaimer, I would, well, I think
That could be a tweak to this paragraph.
it potentially could be. It
Yeah.
could also be a requirement someplace else in the resolution to ensure that any action taken is in compliance with state law. But we're under that requirement anyway.
Yeah.
But so I don't, and frankly, I would make the distinction that while this provision talks about audio recordings, this is both an audio and video recording.
So it covers the audio as part of that, so you can't.
Right, and I don't, I have, I haven't looked at what Teams tells you when you get online to see whether or not you can get that. I mean, it could be something that Teams should provide to anyone who goes online that, consistent with state law, whatever they say. I don't know.
Yeah. But to your
What?
point, go ahead, Josh, or go ahead, Augie.
One thing I noticed, the resolution doesn't actually require the recording of the meeting. So that's not, wherever that comes from, it's not coming from this draft, I don't think.
Oh, good point.
Well, my question was,
Yeah, we still haven't addressed that.
Well, Augie, you're probably right. Now that I think about it, but we're gonna hurdle that problem anyway when we get to records retention, I think. So, but I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
before you move off at the virtual meeting, the Homeowners Act requires an annual meeting for all owners. And if one owner objects to having it recorded and he's at the meeting, can they record the meeting? Because you're not going to have a problem until you have a problem, but it could be a significant one.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
If I show up at a meeting and I don't want to be recorded at the owners
But
meeting,
by law, you are allowed to.
I'm allowed to be there and I don't want to be recorded. Now, how are you going to deal with that? Because if you say you got to leave the meeting, and not me, but somebody hires a lawyer to come back after it, because I was not given the right to attend the meeting because you were going to record it, and the law says you can't record it. How are we gonna deal with that? You need a legal opinion.
you're the lawyer. What do you think?
Jim, you're the lawyer. What do you think?
I mean, maybe,
That advice is only as good as what you pay
maybe
for.
there's a reason, maybe there's a reason none of these resolutions say that the meeting has to be recorded so that there can be a judgment on that, but I don't know.
The Homeowners Act, though, should override anything. Go ahead, please.
I would like for certainty be acquired on what laws we are in fact talking about, specific provisions within the code. I don't see anywhere where we have identified specific provisions that would cover the recording of any of these meetings. I know we're talking about it being, there being laws, but the only very limited searching I have done, there's a website, something like a state IT website, state of Maryland IT website that deals with recording of meetings, audio and visual. And they list three different specific code provisions. One of them's courts and jurisdictions, the other, and I think that deals with evidentiary use of recordings. I can't remember the other two now, but they're dealing with surveillance issues, wiretapping issues in particular.
Yeah.
And that's in the criminal law, right? Article of the code. And then there's a third one. Again, I didn't make a copy of it. I'm not disagreeing or disputing in any manner that there may be laws that cover permission to be in a recorded or not recorded. I'm going to say recorded. I'm just going to say, recorded, the video of meeting that's taking place live in particular, as well as recorded. There may be laws that cover them, but I haven't found any. That doesn't mean they aren't there.
Well, if I can, my recollection is that a lot of these state laws really relate back to, for instance, if a radio station calls up a celebrity and wants to sort of do a gotcha. And so some of the state laws allow one party to grant permission. Other state laws require both parties to grant permission, or in this case, all parties to grant permission. I think that's where the genesis of a lot of this comes from. And this goes back to years ago when I did a lot of communications work when I worked on the Hill. My best guess is the issue is ultimately legal liability. I think our liability is limited as long as we act pursuant to the Homeowners Act, because that's what we are. My best guess is, it would suffice. Now, as I say, it may be worthwhile to include at an appropriate place in this resolution, inclusion of a disclaimer relating to audio and video recordings or something like that, if required under state law. And let council decide whether or not we have to have one. I mean,
That's
I
thought.
would be
That's a
suspicious of
council.
that.
I think we've been recording and meetings for a long time now,
Yeah.
2-3 years
Yeah.
at least. And council knows that's going on. He hasn't spoken yet. And we need, I would think there needs to be some established policy regarding how we handle these meetings, whether it's committee meetings, board meetings, or members meetings, related to what the legal requirements are.
Well, how about this? How about if I forward an email to Doug and Jeremy and point out that this has come up, and what needs to be done in terms of a disclaimer on board meetings, committee meetings that are recorded, and the annual meeting as well, if necessary. it's not necessary, then fine, you know. And leave it at that and see what we get back. I mean, and then if we have to, I'm assuming if necessary, we can pass an appropriate resolution pretty quickly that you know, that meets whatever our goal would be. I mean, would that
Yeah.
seem okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I would never assume anybody gave you that information. All due respect to lawyers. You can assume that they probably haven't. And I would say that about doctors too.
Well, as I said so many
I don't
times,
have,
you don't have a
pick
problem till you
favorites.
have a problem.
That's right.
And it could be innocent, you
I'm
don't know.
sorry.
Yeah, but it's a good point about the annual meeting, because the annual meeting is the one mandated by state law,
Right,
Right.
and it has to be open to all membership.
membership. It must be, and you can't exclude a member. And if,
So
Well, so
we might come up with one way to treat, you know, our committee meetings,
Yeah,
and stuff,
there's-
things that aren't
there's work
mandatory.
around there.
right.
And then we might have to treat the annual meeting differently, you know, because of that.
That's why you need a legal opinion.
But, right.
Laura,
Well, our board meetings are open to all as well,
Go ahead.
unless we fall under one of the subject
Go ahead, Jim.
matters that close one.
one more comment on B03, and I'll try to maintain my observer status. I don't know about I don't know about the actual red line in here. There was, B03 did go to a first reading almost a year ago now. It was basically a companion with the M06 amendment on electronic voting. And this resolution, whether it's the same red line or not, this resolution didn't continue beyond first reading because of the question on being able to verify a member for quorum purposes. It got stopped there and never went anywhere else, never came up again. And I think I'm the one guilty of resurrecting it again. It's out there as a first reading. Has it just been ignored permanently? And we don't want to even consider virtual meetings at the membership level? Or is there ever going to be consideration for this coming annual meeting? Are we going to try again for the possibility of a virtual meeting in which you can participate in the meeting virtually? If not, if it's not a ripe issue, then it should be taken off the board.
Well, here again, and you're right about. In fact, I have the first reading resolution here, which was for the board meeting on June 22nd of last year. Yeah, I mean, there was a first reading. I don't know. I thought that the matter was just tabled. My recollection of that meeting was there was a fair amount of discussion about electronic voting, and then they went to this issue, and I think it was Larry Perone, I'm not sure, raised the issue of, you know, how do we do this and count it for a quorum and what happens if they leave? And I thought the issue was just tabled. My inclination, in fairness to the new board, would be to go back to just the first reading again. And I don't know whether it's ripe or not, because clearly, when you go back to M06 and the discussion at the last board meeting and what's going on in social media about this, you know, the issue of virtual or internet voting is still a hot button item for a lot of people. Or electronic voting more appropriately.
Well, your reference earlier to paragraph II, where we tasked the general manager with, you know, essentially pulling this off. In there, it says that the general manager is responsible for ensuring that only qualified members of Ocean Pines may be counted toward a quorum to vote and to fully participate. Now, it doesn't say how they're going to do that. But if this were to pass as written, this would require the general manager to come up with a way to do it.
Right, and it's a prerequisite before you can do it.
If memory serves me correctly, wasn't the whole issue is that the annual meeting for the last year or two, I can't remember exactly, we weren't making the quorum that is required. So they wanted to be able to give that option of having the virtual members count towards that, because that was the only way we made quorum this most recent annual meeting. There was not enough people in person to make that quorum,
Right.
you know, so if you take it totally off the table, are we gonna get stuck with back to the only in-person quorum situation, and then we have to go back and either adjust our numbers again, or, you know, vote to change our requirement on what counts for the annual meeting quorum, because you can't keep going year after year and saying, well, we didn't make quorum, and so these minutes weren't passed, or these elections weren't, you know what I mean? So I think maybe it should go back to the newest board then, I guess. I don't know the best answer for that either, but.
I'm just saying, it seems to me that paragraph I meets Jim's concern.
And again,
I don't have a concern. My only concern is,
Or your input.
my only concern is the committee wasting its time talking about something that's not gonna happen.
Well, I'll defer to the committee. All I know is it's on the governance document to be, you know, there's been no action on this resolution, so that's fine. I mean, I don't have any pride of authorship in any of this, so that's fine.
I don't wanna get,
Right.
again, be a participant too much in this. But, you know,
My,
to bring it back up again as an issue on the agenda. This is out there, still out there.
right. And I think that's right. And as I said, my view would be based upon what happened back in June, where there was no resolution at all, whether it was officially tabled or not tabled. There was no, we have a new board. And so I have no problem, if the committee wants me to, raising this as a first reading and let the board hash it out. They may vote for it, they may vote it down, they may want amendments. I don't know what they're going to want to do. But you're right, tying it back to the issue of electronic voting in M06 back in June. That, you know, there's a lot of hubbub about both of these coming through. And there's still a lot of bad feeling about electronic voting. I mean, you just have to read what people are writing. So whatever the committee wants to do is fine by me. I don't have a problem with it coming up. And as a first reading, it'll be in front of the board.
right.
And then, you know, I can wait 30 days, I can wait 60 days and bring it back and see what they say. I mean, that's really what the first reading is about anyway.
So what we have today is something that's been modified from the original first
Right.
reading. Is that it?
I think this,
Significantly modified.
As of,
this is not what went to first reading.
No,
But because of first reading, I think it then went to council. And then council came back with this.
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah, these aren't our red lines.
These were not
We
ours.
didn't do any of that.
And again, it has no date, so we don't know who did it when.
In fairness, part of it is ours. I mean, I inserted AII
Okay.
Based upon our last
Oh,
conversation.
okay.
And I wonder if I did.
Well, we
anything
didn't
else.
create the original red line though. That you're right. We did.
That's
We
correct.
had
That's correct.
discussions about it.
Mhm.
So some of it now has been added that we might have had input on, but we didn't create the original red
You're
line.
talking about council as in lawyer, not a council.
Our board
Yes.
council.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Corporate
the
attorney.
original red line draft at the June meeting, whatever it was written by, I think, I don't know that's for a fact, but it reads like something that the attorney would put together.
Mhm.
I don't know the place
Yeah.
it came from.
That's your note that I have here. It says from Jim.
My suggestion to the committee, put today's date on this. Have it go to Steve for a first reading with the necessary background. It's here. It's never been dealt with. Here it is again.
Yeah.
That's, I'm setting up, I think. I'm gonna say out.
Well, and maybe, I don't know, send a note with it that said, some questions to consider when reading this.
Yeah, what I would do, and I think this probably makes, I think Doug in particular would appreciate this based on what he said to me in the past. I would be inclined, if the committee wants to move this forward for the March board meeting, I would either take this as, well, whatever changes you make today, but take this and send it to the board with that notion that, you know, this is a matter that came up in June. As best as we can determine, the matter was either tabled or there was no resolution, and there it sat after the first reading. The committee still has it on its governance document. It's a matter the board to consider. And based upon the fact that the board has changed, we're bringing it back for the purpose of the first reading at the March meeting. You know, whatever thoughts you have, you can raise at that point. Just wanted to let you know and see what they say.
I don't think we need to update or change anything right now. I think I would, unless you guys think there is, but, you know, get some feedback from the board before we spend more time trying to rewrite.
I agree with that. I think we should just
Take this.
put a date on this.
Yeah.
But then attach to it a piece of paper that just has some general notes and comments from our discussions that we don't know the answers to.
Right, we don't.
But we think may be applicable to this, and that somebody, like an attorney, probably should dig into it a little bit and see if it is.
Yeah, I think you want to encourage owners that can't attend the meeting to agree to yield their vote, like you do in stockholder corporations.
Well,
AT&T's been doing it for years.
Right.
And
There
they're
are some who
legal.
would not share that view, but that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
it all depends on what comes back. I mean, if an
Yeah.
attorney comes back and goes and has dug into these
Yeah,
the
I
state
think-
laws
I
and
think
says,
that's it.
you're gonna have an issue here if somebody says no,
Right.
Yeah.
then you're gonna have to come up with something.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to come up with something.
Well, I think that's the state law question in this document.
Right.
I'm going to deal with an email to Doug and Jeremy, and because Doug has to tell Jeremy,
Right.
go
Right.
ahead and
Task him.
engage in the
Yeah.
research. Doug may feel it's not important. At that point, we're done. This issue, I'll circulate to the other board members if the committee wants me to, in advance of just putting it into the packet, just so it's
Right.
recognize this as a different level of controversy or interest. It's got a little bit of a history. Here's what we know. Here's why we're doing this. It's your call. It'll be up for first reading at the March board meeting.
Yeah.
We'll go from there.
Good.
So if we're gonna do that, then my question is, you brought it up earlier because you were talking about the records retention resolution, but the issue of what gets recorded,
Mm-hmm.
because that's currently not in here and it's currently not in the record retention one. So the question is, which one should it be in? If it's more appropriate, for example, for it to be in this one, then that would be part of our note that goes back and says, should that guidance or that direction rather be here? Do you think it should be in the records retention resolution, which is a much simpler, kind of straightforward resolution, or should it be someplace else? But we can't forget that part.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes no sense to come up with all these rules about what we're going to do with meetings if it's totally up to everybody's own option whether or not they do them in the first place.
Yeah.
It's kind of silly.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Well, I think my view would be that the issue of who decides to record meetings needs to be in the records retention resolution rather than this, because this only deals with the annual meeting, or primarily only.
That's right. Yeah.
And
So, and I think we'll have to, because it's sort of broken out already. We have board of directors meetings and committee meetings listed already. We would have to insert a sentence in there saying basically, as it applies to the committees, each committee will decide whether or not they want their meetings recorded for the period of time that's provided for. Because there's at least one committee that I know of that does not say their meeting.
But that's my point. If it, let's just say theoretically it's left up to the committee, then why would we go to the trouble of mandating that your video be archived for any period of time.
Well,
If all you have to
because
say is,
That's,
don't
I mean,
do it.
if the video's taken, you need a rule on how long you keep it.
But
The
right, but
issue
if
of
it's your
whether
option
to make the
video,
video is, I think it's trickier in some ways.
yeah,
Well, in part because we have however many advisory committees that we have, how many committees in total we have, and they all operate on this issue independently. So those that want to have their videos archived, excuse me, would have to vote to do so. And then it would be kept for the period of time that's in the record retention resolution. The board of directors has the same obligation, and I think the board will also have to, I think the board would be the appropriate body to vote on the annual meeting as well. Because the committee that wants the video archived, would have to vote to do so, and then it's saved for that. I think it's 2 months. If you want to get into this right now, we can go back to why are we going through the record retention issue at all? Put that aside. But I think by addressing it there, you avoid the B03 has limited scope because it's only the annual meeting.
Right.
So if we want to address the larger issue, we probably need to do it record retention.
well, so on that point, I know we're saying that, but that's not specifically what B03 says. It sort of insinuates that in the language. So do we want to update the language to make it very clear that B03 only relates to the annual meeting? Because what it says is conduct of meetings of the members. Meetings. of the
Right,
members.
but
And then-
number 3 says meetings of members, section 4.02 of the bylaws provides that the annual meeting of the members of the association for the validation of results.
Right.
Yeah, now, there may be other meetings of the members.
And it says special meetings under 4.03 provides for special meetings.
Right, yeah, so I'm just, it's not explicitly clear that this is just for the annual meeting, but if we want to make it that way, then we could either change the title, annual meeting of association members,
Keith?
or, yeah,
I think it applies to the annual meeting and the section 4.03 special meetings.
right.
So it's more than just the annual
What's a
meeting.
special meeting?
Well, that the meeting was called for a special reason.
Okay, as opposed to the town hall meetings that you occasionally conduct.
I think that's correct. Now, by the way,
Those are not-
just-
Those are special meetings.
Those are just convenience.
Yeah.
My time, there's never been a special meeting.
just again, just to be clear, that again, in number 3 is the reference to 4.02, 4.02 and 4.03, but the sentence that follows
Is
is that meetings of the association may be held as virtual meeting or hybrid of a virtual meeting and in-person meeting as directed by the association president. So he captures it under either one, whether it's the annual meeting or the special meeting. President
Okay.
decides this is the way we're going to proceed.
But then, am I hearing you correctly, Keith? That by just saying meetings of the association can also apply to the committee meetings? That it's
Oh, no.
not specific enough there?
Oh, no,
or is
No.
that where you're thinking that there's
It-
it's not clear enough, or?
Well, just reading top to bottom, purpose, right? So I would just think if it were just for the annual and special meetings, that in the very first paragraph, purpose, it would be very explicit, and then from that point on, we know that's all we're talking about. But it doesn't get that
Right,
explicit until
title-
paragraph
The
3.
title just says.
So I don't know, it's kind of a nit, it's not a huge deal, but I'm just saying because we have it, because we're redlining it, I'm just putting it to the committee, do we think we need to tweak the language, is it fine the way it is?
I almost,
I
let's
tend
just.
to agree that like by using meetings of the association at the start of that red line, it is a little confusing rather than saying meetings of the members, but I don't know why it said meetings of the association there after talking very clearly about what this is about, meetings of the association members. So might be worth changing the word association to members there, or
Are you talking about the title?
No, I mean, the first,
That
like,
first red
first
line, the
sentence
first
in
red
red,
sentence.
after talking about meetings of the members, that first
Oh,
sentence
I
in red
see.
says meetings of the association.
Oh,
What
that's
is a
correct.
meeting of the association? Is that more than just meetings of the members? Is that other kinds of meetings? Kind of makes it ambiguous a little.
Pardon me?
Consistent with the title.
Yes, it should
So you
be,
have to insert the word members
right.
after the word association.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, that's what
Yeah.
I think would be clear.
yeah, I think that would be, and since that's already that's part of the red lines.
Right,
Yeah. I
that's
think
part of
good.
it, just add the
Okay.
word member.
Members.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
got it.
insert the
Makes
word
it
members
clear.
after that. Yep.
Yep, and then other than that, you're just tilting windmills.
I had to go look that up the last time you said that.
Go Don Quixote.
All right, so we know what our path is on this one. We added the one word after association members, right?
Mhm.
And then.
We're gonna put a date on it,
And
Put a date on it,
add a date,
today's date,
but we're
right?
not changing
and
anything
it's gonna
else
go
at the
for first
moment.
reading.
And we're gonna
Submit it
send
for the
it
first
to the
reading.
liaison to then present it for a brand new first reading.
And
You
we
agree
want
with
to
that?
submit with it some
Mr.
notes.
Liaison.
Yes.
And
Right.
I'd only add one other thing, maybe for the notes. It looks like the red line language tracks very closely to HOA, the Homeowners Act 11B-113.6, which
Yeah.
is something that looks like it got added to the Homeowners Act to deal with virtual meetings.
Mhm.
Yeah, that seems to be down in 3D.
Yeah,
Yeah, it references it. So I looked at that statutory provision. It's very similar to the red line language. So it pretty closely tracks the statute.
Okay. Yeah, as to what I will tell the other board members will be basically a brief history. And our understanding is that most of these changes were done by council. And we would indicate where we made some additional, and I'll indicate where we made some additional changes. And just say, we're prepared for this for first reading at the March board meeting.
okay,
Will that suffice for everybody?
agree.
And we're agreeing not to put any language in here about recording.
I think that should be a side question, is
Part
whether,
of the notes.
yeah, that should be part of the note.
Who's going to draft up the notes?
Well, I think that's me.
You're gonna draft
Because
up
I'm
the
going to
notes?
send it to the board.
Oh, okay.
But as I said,
What do you got?
my inclination as to the issue of audio and video recordings is to send that to Doug and Jeremy separately.
Right,
No, I'm with you on that.
I don't.
My point was,
Go ahead.
my point was not the direction of who shall, but rather if you do, if the meeting's going to be recorded, then there must also be a means to,
comply with the law.
it must comply with any applicable law regarding something like, no, because right now it doesn't talk about recording at all. It just says you've got to have a virtual meeting. This is what
Right.
you've got to comply with.
What my intention would be to Doug and to Jeremy would be to reference both B03
Oh,
and B09, which is the records retention issue.
Right.
Well, then, okay, I'm with you on that. So let's say Doug looks at that and goes, yeah, we need to get this question answered. He tasked Jeremy to do it. What's the feedback loop that would then come back to these and say, hold off on making any decisions on these until we get this feedback?
I mean, that's sort of up to Doug and Jeremy. I mean, again, I don't, depending upon what happens, assuming we'll finish with records retention today.
This would be a first reading anyway, so
Right.
it's not going to get
So-
approved anyway.
At that point, we can sort of throw emails all around the world to see whether or not everybody's ready for it to come up or not to come up. And to some degree, we'll actually answer, I think, Jim's question, which is, do they want to confront this issue or not? And we'll get a
Okay.
better reading at that point. That'd be my sense.
I'm good.
Good,
Okay.
I'm good.
thank you.
Now, we started this whole thing about the survey. Where are we with that?
Which survey are we talking about? On the,
Any survey that you'd like to talk about? Because we started out, that's what began this discussion about whether or not people could log in and use the survey.
right. Again, my feeling is that that's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, Josh and the public affairs department, they do these, I think they're Survey Monkey surveys. They've done several on amenities, and they now have the one out on the electronic sign. I can forward the question to John Viola, and he'll shoot it off for an answer as to whether or not, what safeguards exist to make sure that only Ocean Pines members are responding to the survey. I don't know the answer, and candidly, as I think I said at the outset, I don't know that really falls within our
Oh, okay.
jurisdiction, or our umbrella, or whatever term you want to use.
Mhm.
I think it's a legitimate question to ask. But I don't know the answer. But if you want me to,
Well, John's not the one sending out these surveys,
No,
right?
Josh is. But
Josh, oh, okay.
Josh reports to
John,
John.
General manager.
Okay, yeah.
The only question I have is, as you restrict more and more ways of people who can't complete the survey ends up not being valid. So it's an operations.
Right. I think that's correct. And there's other issues too. For instance, how many people respond? I mean,
Yeah,
if you're only getting 10 people to respond,
Right.
as opposed to, let's
That's
say,
exactly
120,
right.
you're going to get a much different
Yeah.
weighting. Yeah, I agree.
Or even if those 10 just feel one way, that's still not representative of
You got
the others. that don't.
8,400. If you
Yeah.
get 100 back, that's not even a good sample.
Well, the way
Small
things
sample
go
size.
here, if you can get 40% of the people who are eligible to vote to
To
participate.
Yeah.
that's about as good as it gets here.
Mhm.
So if you say,
Because that's our highest vote count, basically, for board of directors elections,
holy Toledo.
so if you
which is kind of sad.
if you say that's 40%, that's the
Well-
standard. Now, what percentage of that are you getting back?
I'm only going to make a side comment. It is shocking that it's only 40%, but I remember when I was working full time, this would have come in real late in my day, like maybe not until the next year. My point is, I didn't have the time for it then. That's why I wouldn't participate, although I will assure you, I did participate on everything. But I just know how busy people are.
I think you're right.
But if
So
you got-
more restrictions, less participation. That's all. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so moving on to new business.
yes,
Since it's just after 2:00.
Can I ask one question?
Uh-huh.
You want to have, I think it's helpful for the committee to vote on what we're doing with B03, rather than just leaving it.
Oh, do you want to make an official?
Well, I can't.
No, I'm not you.
I'll make a motion.
You feel that we need to
Yeah.
make it a more formal, okay.
Yeah.
So let me think about how to word this.
Oh, you just make a motion. You
Huh?
make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve B03 with the information we provided, which is dating it, the list of questions that are going to be presented,
Adding the word member
adding the word member.
Right.
Am I missing anything?
back for a new first reading.
And back for new first reading.
I second that.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the motion on the floor for everything Bob just said with B03? Please say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
You got it, Augie, right?
I just have one
opposed?
question.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything that I've ever worked with always has draft written on it, in that underlying thing. Is that something you do here or don't do here?
You talking about like a watermark?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
that's what I
watermark.
just couldn't
It
think of the
depends.
The problem is all these different committees all have different access to various levels
Oh,
of
okay.
Yeah,
Computer, Yeah,
not everybody uses
software
Word.
editing or, document editing.
or even, the knowledge
Or
on how
knows
to
how.
find, how to put the
Yeah.
watermark on.
Okay.
So I mean, we
you know.
could, we could write,
We
know.
can write draft.
I can write draft next to
Yeah.
the today's
Yeah, the
date.
date and the
Yeah.
draft is, would solve the whole problem.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Important part of drafting.
Yeah. Yeah, with no
Because then
date, you
some
don't
of
know
you
what
all
you're
get all
dealing with.
fancy and you add these things, and then when I'm trying to clean them up and make a clean copy, I can't figure out how to get rid of one, you know, so.
You could pick something from 2 years ago and
You
submit it
can
again
find
because
any
it
of that
doesn't have a date
information
on
on Google.
Yeah.
it. Okay.
All right, so,
Next.
under new business, the next thing, I have listed is B09, the records retention. Is that, look at the ones that we have listed here. Is there, a priority then on which ones you want to talk about?
Well,
I can't remember. If-
I'm confused on that issue. Because if you go back and read the Maryland's Homeowners Act, no, there's a lot of implies which should be there, but there's no clear definition.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we need a
read what
legal
you found.
opinion on that one. What does the Maryland Homeowners Act require? Because,
Well, let me,
Or what do we want to put at Snow Hill?
right,
So if the homeowners, if the Maryland statute is not gonna be clear,
Right,
is that okay with us? Do we want to make it more clear by including it in our resolution?
yeah.
Do we want to leave it the way it is? Because you're right, what you found is just.
yeah, I
smoke and
read through
mirrors.
the thing, boring as it is, and I can't get clear definition.
well, let me, if I can. This, the proposed resolution has a genesis in trying to, for Ocean Pines to be able to archive what needs to be archived and what can be dispensed with, because we have limited capacity, particularly as it applies to video. I'm assuming, although I don't think the issue's ever been presented to us up front, is we don't want to spend more money to save more video. And so for that reason, that's where this has its beginning. As to the issues that you raised as to what's in the repository and what's not in the repository with book and records and all this other stuff, the intent, and I think I'm right about this, the intent is that the more permanent record is always going to be the minutes, not the video.
Right.
And, again, different committees do things differently. Some of the minutes are far more detailed. I mean, if you ever look at the board minutes, there's not a lot of detail.
No.
But that's the intent. Now, as to what's in the repository, as opposed to what's considered book and records, the way I would describe it to you is this way. And Jim, if I'm wrong, you tell me, but here's anything available for public inspection. The charter, the bylaws, the resolutions, etc., is in the repository. A book and records request is different in that you have to sort of specify. Now, anything in the repository may be in a book and records request, but everything in a book and records request probably is not in the repository. And the reason why I say that is because you can seek financial disclosures, you can seek emails, you can seek correspondence in a book and records request if it's appropriately framed out and limited in scope. Then you have the ability to get what you want. And council has gone through this because it's come up. Council has gone through this at various times, whether it's pursuant to a lawsuit or a suitable request by any member and that sort of thing. So they're two different things. This provision dealing with records retention is really what Ocean Pines is going to hold on to, and for how long are they going to hold on to it?
Okay.
Now, if minutes are to be kept in perpetuity, then they have to make sure the minutes get into the repository. But in terms of what's, for lack of a better term, what's going to be kept on site, that's what this is meant to address. That would be my reading of the situation.
Okay.
So with that, then I'm wondering if the title of this should be more specific, because records retention policy is very broad.
Open-ended, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, if I were a newbie coming into this, I'd go, oh, this is gonna be a big reading, you know, record retention policy. Because this only really applies to a subset
Mhm.
of the records in total, right?
Right.
So maybe this title needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Is this so
I don't think this is the most recent copy. Didn't I tweak this and then resend it back out to everybody? Yeah, I think I did.
let me see if I can find
Let me see. What are we dealing with?
It's
Is
not
there a
dated.
date on it?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Okay, it's
You're right.
blanket. It's not the old one. It should be the original marked up.
Oh, my goodness. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, because I think I cleaned up the formatting a little bit. I deleted that thing where I was asking about Maryland law.
Yeah.
I did something else. I think I cleaned up this section too.
Well, I think in archive management,
General
it was,
under
number 2, general management will maintain a log of
Oh, that's right. I
all
also,
videos and minutes, including when meeting videos.
Yeah, I
and
fixed that
meetings
as well.
are deleted. Yeah.
I fixed that as well. So, yeah, so this is not the most recent.
Okay, tell me.
Is this one?
Let me see what you got there.
Because I printed
Oh, yeah, this is the new one.
everything that came down the last time.
Question is,
Missed that one.
Most recent one I have is a February 12th email, but maybe that's not the most recent one. I don't know.
and so does it have that yellow highlight in it, Augie?
No.
Yeah, so this is the most recent one. That's the one I tweaked after, brought it to the meeting, we discussed it, I went back and I tweaked it to
Okay.
that.
So you deleted Maryland homeowners.
Yeah, I deleted that.
Okay.
You can have this one.
The B0.
Yeah.
I'll give you mine.
Oh, and then attached to that are questions we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that second page is questions. It's, let's see what we still have in here, because it might
It
be.
includes the recording issue we were just discussing.
Yeah, who decides to video and save video?
Right, and so number one is this resolution addresses what to archive, but it does not promulgate policy about which meetings must be recorded. So the you know, what
All
are
right, I
the
got
questions
your
associated with that? And then number two, I put some committee members, and it can be assumed some association members interacting with certain committees have or may express reluctance of being recorded, or such recording would be posted on the public internet. So there's questions associated with that. What are you gonna do about that? What are you gonna do if one of us said no, right, to the question, can we record this? And what, if any, are the specific statutory requirements for record archives retained by the county, which you looked up, you pretty much answered that and said it's pretty limited.
I looked too, I couldn't find anything.
It implies, but it doesn't say it.
Right. So, yeah, so these were basically the questions that we came up with. So I think what we agreed to last time was to make these tweaks,
Okay.
include these questions, and then send this back to the board. I think that's what our decision was.
Right.
It's, if I remember correctly. But just based on what we just talked about a few minutes ago, I'm wondering if we should change this title.
Mhm.
Wonder if this should be audio visual records retention policy.
Well, it's more than that, because it includes minutes.
Yeah.
But then subcommittee,
Yeah.
well, it's not just, it's board of directors and committee meetings.
Well, and as we discussed, well, let me, I think to the extent the committee can decide what it wants to recommend to the board as it pertains to the questions you just raised, that's better than punting it to the board to say, you guys decide. I mean, I think that's why the committee's here.
Yeah, right.
So,
What about like on-site records retention policy? You know, right, isn't that what we were
On-site
talking
record
about?
retention,
More like,
that's an option.
we were focused more not on the repository stuff on this
Yeah.
particular issue, but we were talking about the committees and everything here on, you know, on-site, in the cloud, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, but find a term like that to show that we're talking about this kind of record retention, not the legal records retention that needs to
Non-statutory
be,
record retention policy.
you
I
know,
don't,
I don't
I
know,
would
something.
avoid that, I think. Sounds like you want to do something outside the law.
I don't know.
So, but I think I found your.
Any of our lawyers have any
Oh, there you go.
suggestions?
This has the questions here.
That's it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, you got it.
yeah, there you go.
I get so many darn emails.
I mean, these seem like some important
Well,
questions
and
for the council.
Let's put it.
Go ahead, Augie.
To do it,
This is it PDF? That's PDF, isn't it?
or where?
This is this is an Adobe document, right? This is, yeah, I'm answering one question. It is. In other words, you can't put it in. So,
Yeah, that raises.
Bob's research looks really helpful, but I'd want council to look at, is Ocean Pines required to keep minutes longer than this policy proposes?
Right.
That's a good question, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was,
And I think the other question is potentially, I think, Jim, you made this distinction in a different discussion. The difference between the advisory committees and the committees that are assigned specific tasks, like elections
Oh.
and budget and
Right.
finance.
The work groups. and
yeah, I think
things like
that's
that?
actually in my notes here, and one of the questions, that there's different types of committees. Yeah, that's 1A, talks about the different types of committees, standing advisory,
Right.
impermanent, specifically task, yada, yada.
So what I'm looking at right now, just in terms of what we discussed today, is the board has to decide as to member meetings, whether or not those would be treated the same as or differently than board of directors meetings and committee meetings. The board and the committee both have to decide individually whether they want their videos to be archived for the times for each one. The archive management, there would, I think, would have to be specific language that would say the general manager shall ensure that minutes are retained for a period of time consistent with state law or the Homeowners Act, however you want to phrase it, for inclusion in the repository. Because that's the only place they would be included anyway, other than what we keep. And that's what I've got, but I don't.
The question is, committees serve at the pleasure of the board. So the board would have the option of saying, if it's legal, we want to record it, so we can look at them.
Right, except I think that's right, except for the, well, some committees do, some committees don't.
Right.
Okay. Leaving that aside, what I've been told is, in some other discussions relating to this subject more broadly, is the official record of what the committees do rests in the minutes, not in the videos.
Okay.
Take it for what it's worth. That's what I've been.
Well, like for this committee, wouldn't it make sense to keep the minutes like forever? Because the history of changing things, it'd be so much easier to be able to go back and find minutes, but, you know, or at least on an on-site type of record retention for our committee. Maybe not all committees have to have theirs saved forever, you know,
Yeah, I understand the whole, the minutes thing. What I don't get is if video recording is going to be optional and at the discretion of whomever, why are we setting a policy how long you have to keep it?
Because they can't be kept forever.
No,
Committees that want
why
video-
do we have to keep it at all?
Well, I mean, that was.
I mean, it's an option, right? I mean, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. And then boom, you don't have one at all. So
Right,
why would we have a policy
But some
saying,
committees, like bylaws, have their videos saved for probably going back a year or two. In other words, if someone wanted to go find them on YouTube
Yeah.
or on our website, you would find the 6-hour meeting we did prior to the change in the bylaws. I mean, and you have to sit through all of that. So, I mean,
Right.
and the issue is really to clean this up because we have limited capacity.
so in other words, the direction is not, this is how long you shall keep them. The direction is, don't keep them any longer than this.
Okay. I think.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, if one is saying, hey, I may need that. So you got to keep it at least this. And the other is saying, we don't want this stuff out there forever. So once it gets past this old, make sure you get rid of it.
Yeah, here's the line of demarcation.
Yeah.
Yeah. As to your question, Laura, I mean, again, I don't think you're going to. I don't think the board's going to buy the argument that bylaws minutes should be treated differently than anybody else's. If the chair of the bylaws committee wants to keep minutes for an extended period of time, and when a new chair comes in, take the crate and give it to the new chair, that's
Or
fine.
a flash drive, right, right,
Whatever.
right,
But I don't think the board will sanction that.
right,
Well,
yeah.
Why isn't
The
there
only-
consistency among the committees? The
What?
way they're put together?
Me-
It's
you mean what-
inconsistent, you're telling me. That some committees do this, other committees do that. Why is it inconsistent?
That's what the committees do.
I think it's
It's the only answer I can give you. I don't know the answer.
yeah.
Okay,
There's no set policy that I'm aware of.
And there's nobody to quote enforce and go around and say, oh, this committee is not doing it. You only find about the inconsistencies when you have to talk to somebody else and go, oh, that committee never records any of theirs, or that committee hasn't updated and added their agendas to the website, or whatever, you know.
yeah, but you went to a chairperson
Training. yeah.
training.
Mhm.
That's where the consistency should start.
We've had
Here.
one what training thing.
As it
And that was
applies to
just for the
teams.
new policy.
As it applies to teams.
Yes, and that was just for teens.
Right, and I
That
think
has
the
nothing
reason
to do
why
with
was
minutes.
prior to the pandemic,
Yeah,
this whole issue never existed.
right.
It was
Oh,
only when the pandemic hit us, people could not meet they had to meet virtually, they couldn't meet in person.
right.
Right.
And now we're using sort of hybrids because it's turned out to be pretty convenient.
Yeah,
Right.
So I
And it
I don't know.
increases participation because people who might not be able to physically be here,
Like Augie, yeah.
they can still
He
participate.
can
So
still, right.
so it
He's a
increases
great
it increases
note taker.
participation.
And the other reason they're different is each resolution for the committee is different.
Yeah.
They're charged with doing different things.
I'm not quite sure I get that.
Distribution of agendas and minutes, though, I think is covered in C0.
Those are consistent.
Standard.
That's consistent.
That should be
I just.
Yeah.
I've never been any place where the chairperson, no offense, can make the edict and we all follow it. It usually is very consistent. All the committees operate the same way.
Well.
And the resolutions kind of define
Yeah,
how to operate within it.
Okay,
It's just this particular issue about
Okay, I
recording
got it.
or not recording.
yeah, I
Mike,
got it.
Because it's new.
My
Yeah.
question,
And that's actually, it's all part of the big question is,
my
mandated,
question
is
is,
not mandated, how do we do it? I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, my question is to Steve with the board. the resolutions we're working on that have gone on for a year, sometimes it's nice to be able to go back and look at them. Once the board approves it, those recordings have no value. But there's a lot of conversation takes place on a resolution where our input came from, and you may want to go back and review it. Because the minutes of the meeting can't be that clear.
You're talking about minutes of the board meeting or minutes of the committee?
Minutes of this committee meeting. Because sometimes we have a meeting in January and a resolution doesn't get resolved in the second reading for a year later.
I agree.
And, but I mean, the appeal to the board would be, look at it differently. And where we're trying to resolve an issue, if
Well,
it takes long, sometimes we'll go back and look
And I
at it.
guess that's your point then, in the sense that maybe the recommended times to keep videos from like a committee like ours of 2 months is too short. Because if it's not going to get cleared through the directors,
You
there's
can't
no
clear
way
that quick.
anybody can go back in 4 months then to review our discussion from our point of view as a committee, if it's been deleted because it exceeded
2 months.
the 2 months, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
So
what-
then that goes hand in hand with how timely are we with the directors and.
Right, I understand. I will tell you, I raised that point in emails. And there was a strong inclination to keep it to 1 month. And we were able to get it to 2 months. If, in the wisdom of the committee, you want to make a different recommendation, go ahead and do it. Whether or not the board accepts the recommendation,
Is that something that would warrant a public comment from us, on behalf of our committee? If we created our own
well,
comment on that?
what I would say to you is if this, whatever the committee decides, if this comes up for first reading, you're free in public comments to call this to the attention of the board. And I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. The bottom line is that as I said before, the genesis of this is we have limited capacity for video, and they're trying to cull it to a suitable number. I don't know where, I don't have the statistics to back any of that up. I only know that's what I was told. So, whatever the committee ultimately decides, that's what I will proffer to the board. But
Yeah.
I can only give you what I know as to. And again, this goes back to the other point, which is the official record of any committee's deliberations are its minutes, not its video. Do I think the video would be helpful? Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Right.
quite helpful.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the minutes that are the official record. So, for what it's worth,
Two questions. How long do things stay on Facebook? You're saying Facebook. Who puts it on Facebook and how long does it
It's
stay
there forever.
So it is there forever, so we can go find it on
And
Facebook.
YouTube the same way. You put something on YouTube, it's there forever.
Unless
I'm sorry,
the
our
organization
stuff-
physically
our
says
stuff
we're
is
gonna
our
take it
stuff
off.
is on YouTube. I don't think it's on Facebook.
It's on YouTube.
It's
YouTube.
on YouTube.
I mean,
But
doesn't this draft suggest it'll be removed from the cloud service provider?
I'm sorry, Augie, I didn't hear what you said.
Doesn't this draft suggest it would be removed from the cloud service provider, which I assume is a reference to YouTube?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Well, this does, yeah. I mean, prior to this, there was no, I don't think there was any specific guidelines about how long to leave it on YouTube.
Yeah, I think the question is how much, I don't know the answer to this question. Do we pay you, I'm assuming we
I don't
do.
know.
Do we pay YouTube for them to put it on there and hold it?
No, I
There's
have
no
my,
charge to
I
us at
have
all?
my
No, there's commercials on it.
I have my own YouTube channel that I post lots of different videos on that I have done, whether it was a Facebook Live that I turned into, uploaded onto YouTube so that it stays there forever, I mean, and like you said, the free version, watching it, you may have to see a commercial or two through it, you know, but it's there.
So if
And-
it's
and
there.
I've
then
not, and
it's a
I've
moot
got
point.
different playlists. I've got, you know, family ones. I've got, you know, I've got it all put out, split out into different categories, but there's no limit. Nobody has ever said you've got too many, you know?
That's true, but it may be beyond our control. In other words, if Ocean Pines wants to guarantee it's there for a certain period of time, you know, they might have to, that might be harder. I don't know.
Well, I think Ocean Pines, the owner of that particular YouTube channel, can go in and delete whatever they want.
Well, they can certainly delete it, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
can they guarantee that it stays there for 5 years without?
Oh, yeah. Oh, good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you have.
YouTube could change what they
Yeah,
do
that's
at
a
any
good point.
day.
Mhm.
It's kind of a moot point. 'cause
YouTube
we've
could
dealt-
fold next year, right?
Yeah.
And take all your stuff with them, right?
Right, yeah.
The other issue is when you use a service like YouTube, you're taking content which isn't required open to the public, and you're making it open to the public.
Right, correct.
And-
You can choose to make it public, you can choose to make it private, whatever, but yes.
Yeah, so,
My assumption in all of this was that we're talking only about what Ocean Pines archives on Ocean Pines website.
Right.
I mean, I know, I
I don't
understand, our stuff is available on YouTube. I've seen it.
Mhm. But is that what you're saying? Is that considered part of the on-site
Well,
retail?
I thought
because
the links on here were just links to YouTube.
but if
Yeah.
there's no charge,
Oh.
then the underlying rationale for this resolution is we have limited capacity. We don't want to spend more money to increase capacity. Therefore, this is why we're taking this action.
Right.
If there's no charge by YouTube for uploading our committee meetings, our board meetings, or anything else, I don't know why it's in there. Take it out.
Right.
Right.
Because I think my assumption is we're only talking about the Ocean Pines website, because that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, it seems to me that when you go to the website and you start looking at, where was it?
If you look at the videos, I'll tell you what, if you mishandle the video, it flips you over to YouTube. Now I'm watching something I don't want, and I gotta go back and sign in and start over.
Well, you may want to watch it to the end.
Well, it doesn't start you all over. It doesn't start you all over. You just click skip ad and it continues
I
on.
haven't figured,
So what I'm saying, I think what's in our Ocean
say a lot.
Pines website is just a link to YouTube.
Right.
Is
Yeah,
it?
So,
Yeah. The
yeah,
YouTube.
it's all YouTube. Yeah.
So
So
you're not
then
paying,
what's,
you're not paying for anything.
so what's the point?
Right, but, well, I understand that, but what they're talking about, again, I may be wrong, but what they're talking about
Is to keep that link on the website,
is to, after 2 months,
take that link
you
off.
take them off. So in other words,
Yeah, but that's not taking up any space.
Yeah,
That's like microbytes. You know, that list could be pages and pages long. It wouldn't cost you,
and
you know, another half a cent. That's just text in a HTML document.
and when you go
The storage
over-
cost is for the actual megabytes of video.
Yeah.
That's
don't-
the cost.
I don't think we can assume that we don't have to pay for that kind of a service from YouTube to retain formal records like that. I just don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer either.
I don't
That's
know.
probably fair.
And as I said, like if we
I
want
know.
them to formally
Big
maintain them
statement.
for a period of time, then they might charge for that kind of thing.
I guess I haven't subscribed yet. I'll have to do it when I'm hooked into my own Wi-Fi at home. But you know, like the YouTube channel has 418 subscribers.
I guess the real question is,
According to this, the storage and
Nice to
coding
have.
costs are close to none.
Hmm.
0.025 cents per gigabyte per YouTube. That's
Watch
like
your
next
cord.
to nothing.
yeah,
Well, I think it's a
One video is a lot of
Good
gigabytes.
question. Good
Well-
question, yeah.
I guess,
0.025 cents. So it's not even a penny per gigabyte. It's a quarter. It's less than a quarter. It's hurting my brain.
Yeah, don't worry about it,
Okay.
Because it's to YouTube's advantage to
Yeah.
keep this stuff as long as
Because it
possible.
keeps you
Yeah.
going back and
Right,
using their
yeah.
service, yeah. Because if you put one video there, you might go watch somebody else's video.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then those
I mean,
who
that's their
get
whole-
paid to
Well,
have
that's
their
what
videos out
happens.
there.
I'm watching it and instead of putting it in a hole because I want to
Right.
back it up or something, I hit the wrong one and I'm watching
Right.
somebody
You go on
else's
to the next
video.
video, which is a
Flips me
different
right
subject.
over, yeah.
Right.
You're learning how to change a carburetor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know,
Um,
we lived as a committee for how many years without any video recordings, and it's not the end of the
Well,
world. It's a
Right
nice
now,
thing.
I think
our
this needs to
videos
be-
on the website go back to February 3rd, 2021.
But if it's only listing them on the website and it's not costing anything for
Oh,
storage.
yeah, that right there doesn't cost anything.
Yeah,
I mean, if it only costs 0.025 cents per gigabyte of the actual video,
Right.
imagine what that costs.
yeah.
So, I'm wondering, Steve's not here, but I'm wondering now if maybe there was an assumption by the board that we were
That's
paying
okay.
to store all this stuff.
Yeah,
And so therefore we needed to put a restriction on it because they're supposed to be good stewards of the membership's money.
Right.
sure.
And so,
but shouldn't-
in other words,
shouldn't the
maybe this
general
isn't even
manager know
necessary.
that?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the general manager know that and have it in their budget if there was an expense for you?
correct, but the board would have to go to John and say, need you to look into this and come back to report on this.
Right.
And they may not have done that yet. They may be, maybe they're waiting for this. And then they're gonna go to John and say,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
what could you do? And then John may come back and go, we really don't pay for those.
Right. Right.
So maybe before we expend any more time and effort on this,
Yeah, yeah.
somebody needs to go ask John what they're
Well.
spending on storage.
Again, we need our board liaison to ask.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
board-
mean, do we, as a committee, is that what we want to agree the approach is? That maybe we just call timeout for a minute and see
Yeah,
if.
time out and see what it costs. If it's
Yeah.
not costing anything, then it's a moot point.
Yeah, and then maybe all we're doing is just creating work for ourselves. Now we got this
Right.
new one we have to manage.
Yeah, it's just another resolution. And they only have how many? Is that lots?
Steve get locked out.
I should read.
No,
No, all your stuff's in here. Your car keys are in here.
can't get through there without it,
That's an automatic lock.
you know.
And you're not gonna have this much desk space at home.
No, that's true.
That's why.
All right, so Keith, repeat for Steve what you just said about pausing.
So what we talked about, when we kicked you out was, we think, I'm suggesting that we consider, a pause on this resolution pending, information from the manager on what's currently being spent to store all this material.
And
Because he may come back and say, well, we don't, we just put it on YouTube and we really don't pay much for that.
Right,
And then if that's the case, then the question is, well, then do we even need this? If the purpose of this is to restrict storage to save money, and we're not spending any money, then do we really need this at all? That's my suggestion.
If that's what the committee wants to do, that's fine.
I think we're
I'll forward
looking
the
for a little
question
bit
on.
more
The
question.
other way.
Can I add? I'll just
Mhm.
add that there are organizational costs of maintaining things over long periods of time. I know the government has record retention policies. It kind of just gets confusing if like you have warehouses of very old records. So I think we have to recognize that there are other costs other than exactly what YouTube is charging of keeping track of all this and organizing it and making sure it's in a format that is accessible and et cetera, that might become a headache if the number of videos gets too large and just sort of goes back for a long enough period of time that but I don't know, but it's just something to keep in mind.
I think that's a good point. One of the things that, I'm assuming that this is something that the board has discussed as an issue that needs to be addressed. And then once they came up with something that they were happy with, then they would go to John and say, is this doable? What can be done? And wait for John to come back and go, yeah, we could do this. There's, we'll take this, that. And in other words, the part where John contributes to the discussion hasn't happened yet. Is that a correct assumption?
As I can't answer that question entirely. What I can answer is the front part of that question, which is there has been discussion basically by email about the need to have a records retention policy. And this is and here's what was originally proposed. And the charge was, send a charging document for bylaws to prepare a appropriate resolution to deal with this. How much input John and anybody else, for that matter, has had in all this, I don't know the answer to that. And you may recall that the board approved a fairly sizable expenditure, I want to say 2 months or 3 months ago, to take stuff off of, hard copy, off paper, and migrate it into the cloud, which is an ongoing function. I don't care. So that's sort of where we are. For what it's worth, my suggestion, in part to capture, I think, what Augie's thought is to address those issues in this draft that we know we want to address, that we've already discussed, and leave the issue of cost and whatnot for the board to hash out on its own. If we're retaining things that have costs not visible to us because our stuff's on YouTube, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that by itself eliminates the desire, at least by some on the board, to have a record retention policy. And that's what they want this committee to put together. So that would be my suggestion.
And
if you want to hold this,
it's pretty normal to have. I'm sorry, go ahead. It's pretty normal to have like a records retention length of time for a big organization. So they might just want something to have like a clear rule.
Sorry, yeah, but again, for the purposes of requiring records to be retained in order to be used, or for the purposes of restricting the amount of time records are retained to reduce costs. Because those are two different things. If you're in an environment where somebody can just say, I'm not recording it. Mm-hmm. So that eliminates one of those two scenarios, which means the only scenario that we care about is limiting cost. And so if limiting cost is what's driving this, then it would seem to me, first what we'd want to know is, well, what are we spending? What are we trying to limit? I mean, it may turn out we're spending very, very little, or these particular guidelines that have been come up with just, by some back and forth discussion may end up resulting in a cost that we're not spending today and we don't want to spend it at all.
Well, whether or not we are spending or we want to spend in the future, and again, that's the board's decision. This committee has no say about that. The issue as to how some committees operate, and again, I know how this committee operates, I know how the Communications Committee operates. Communications Committee operates as a virtual meeting every month, but they don't preserve their videos. That's it. That's how what they do. So there's no hybrid. Okay, you meet virtually, and those meetings are not saved. The minutes are submitted, and they get added into the onto our website. That's what they do. I'm not sure what other committees do. Budget and Finance, I think they videotape virtually everything. I'm not sure, I think strategic planning does that. I don't think they meet monthly. I'm not sure about that, but I don't think they meet monthly. I'm not sure about aquatics and the rest. I just don't know. So, golf committee, when I was on the golf committee, did not videotape at all, is my recollection. So, as I say, that I think the issue is developing a policy paper addressing records retention, sort of regardless of the purpose. I mean, that's what the board is charging you to do.
So I don't think that specific language is in here then. In other words, language that would say if videos are created, this is how they
Yeah,
should be
they
retained.
don't, our communications doesn't even have a tab listed for videos because they don't do them.
So-
obviously.
Because, you know, the language that's in here, which was basically copied from that email that you provided, it's got a lot of wills. We'll do this, we'll do that. Well, you're not going to will do it if you just decide you're not doing it.
Well,
So
I mean, that's what, I'm not sure who did this, but that's what one person drafted.
Yeah.
shall be preserved.
Shall is different than will.
Um,
Shall means must, right?
Shall is a requirement.
so, you know, the way it's,
Usually it's shall and may. I'm not sure about will.
Okay.
it says any board or committee meeting recorded videos, any, and their associated meeting minutes shall be preserved using appropriate storage. So it says any, the way it's currently worded. So, you know, that's not a mandate that they have to record. That just, to me, the way I read that is if there are some, this is what you got to do with them. Any, the next sentence is any meeting video recorded. So, but see up at the top, and again, I put some of this in here because I'm just drafting it. So, you know, don't, you know, this, if this needs to be changed, it needs to be changed. But, you know, I put in here, section 701 of our bylaws directs corporate records are kept and made available upon request to members of the associations.
Kept, and the question is, how long should they be kept? That's the real issue.
Right.
You
So
only need them till,
if
they're
the
not,
bylaws don't specify, then can we specify, can we restrict? If the bylaws don't restrict, we can restrict here?
Jim.
Yes.
I was trying to avoid it.
He wants to remain quiet over there.
I noticed that.
I'm just gonna review my emails here.
If you don't have a governing document requirement, the resolution becomes your requirement. And if it's something that's going to be enforceable against the membership, go in the depository. So I, you know, there's nothing in the governing documents about records retention, so you're setting the policy for the association here.
So that covers what's down in Snow Hill and what's available locally and how long.
I did cover
Right.
any public law requirement.
That's what I mean, because there is.
Apply to any of this.
Well, yeah, but the public law requirements, I think I'm right, does not raise at all the issue of video. And
No.
2, does not raise the issue of committees.
No,
So the question as to what goes into the repository,
it's a,
even if you assume it's safe in perpetuity, it's really only the board minutes and
Right.
potentially the minutes, if they're kept, I assume they are, of the annual meeting or any other meeting of the association members.
right.
I don't think
So back to our bylaw provision, 7.01, where it says, and this is, I copied this, corporate records be kept and made available upon request. So what's the definition of corporate records?
Corporate records to me would be that which is filed in the repository.
I wouldn't say that.
You think it's also it includes financial stuff, financial matters as well?
We'll get off on a real discussion here if we're not careful.
I noticed we did that already.
I think you're right. What goes in the depository is disclosures. And you have to read the HOA provisions.
Okay.
Not the HOA provisions. Yeah, the HOA provision, I'm sorry. 11B, 105, 106, and 107 are the relevant depository provisions. They discuss disclosures. And you don't have to disclose, this is, I'm talking, try to be specific, but not necessarily all inclusive specific. You don't have to put in the disclosure those documents that are available through publicly held resources. And that includes filings among the land records, the declarations of restrictions are in the land records. You don't have to file those in the depository. You don't have to file the charter or all the variations of what a charter can be, because you can get those from the State Department of Assessment and Taxation. What you do have to add in there, though, is anything that's enforceable against in the association. And that includes specifically the bylaws. And for Ocean Pines, that would also specifically include the ARC guidelines, right? Because you enforce ARC guidelines.
And our resolutions too.
No, you don't have to.
Resolutions, correct?
Not all the resolutions unless it's something that's enforceable.
Okay, right, that's right.
There are in here 2 or 3 or 4.
Right.
There are candidates, at least, let's put it that way. And farther on in the agenda, we may or may not get to today. In the 6-hour session is the search committee resolution.
Oh, yeah.
My recollection is that I was advised by the previous liaison that when the new bylaws were placed in the depository, M09 also was. And that has enforceable provisions in it. Okay. If it isn't, it does have, and I think it was. But at any rate, you don't look at books and records or corporate records in the depository.
No.
Look at what the HOA Act says are disclosures. Okay. Books and records include disclosures, but disclosures doesn't include all books and records.
That's what I think I had said to you before.
And
You're right.
in general, what is required, or not required, I'm sorry, is that which is publicly available, that bylaws and other documentation or rules, regulations, or whatever that you can only get from the association. So that's the only repository of them. If they're enforceable against the membership, they have to be in the HOA depository. I hopefully I haven't been confusing them.
No, that was very helpful, actually.
Think there's disclosures, don't think books and records, look at the provisions in the HOA Act and
Which I
read
have the HOA
Disclosure.
up there.
if somebody goes down there someday.
We gotta do it. We
So
agreed
back,
to it.
back to this,
And make an inventory of what's there, and have an idea of what should be there. They have what you will need is a full inventory of what's there, and then come back here and reconcile what's there versus what you
What should be? Okay.
think should be there.
do you have the bylaws?
The what?
Do you have a copy of the bylaws in there?
I do, you know.
Well,
I have the old ones
I
on.
wanted it to come up on the screen. I just wanted to confirm that I didn't wordsmith this, that I copied that out, because I wouldn't put it
What am
past
I
me
looking
to.
for?
What,
The full,
Section 701. Back to this issue of corporate records, because if it's not defined in there, I think that's problematic. But I may be making more of this, you know, I know I've been doing a lot of talking, and
701 speaks to books and records.
this one I just pulled up is the 2008.
I'll read it
Is
for
that the
you.
right one?
701 maintenance. This is the title of Article 7 is corporate books and records. 701 maintenance, except as otherwise provided in the bylaws, in the laws of the state of Maryland. The books and records of the association shall be kept and such place or places as the custodian thereof selects within the state of Maryland. All such books and records or copies thereof shall be made available on request to members of the association or their agents at any reasonable time.
At any reasonable time, okay. So, and it says books and records. So at any reasonable time. So I guess theoretically, this resolution could then be setting what we're saying that reasonable time is, right?
Well, that should be available at any reasonable time. It doesn't say anything about how long a time to retain them, though. It just says when it's requested, you gotta be able to give it to them
Right.
within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and I thought there's something maybe in the homeowners act that sort of defines that.
The homeowners act one, I want to say that one usually, I don't know if I can find it real quick, but I thought it said like, you either have 30 days or 15 days to respond to the request or whatever. It's
Yeah, I
usually
think
something
that-
like
I
that
think
that
that's
you
right.
have to,
But that, to Jim's point, that's just how long it takes you to cough it up,
right,
not how long you're gonna keep it
right.
on file,
Exactly.
how many
But-
years you're gonna keep
So
it.
if it doesn't address how long you keep it at all, that implies almost that you need to keep it forever because anybody can ask at any time, and if you don't have it, then they're gonna say, why didn't you have it? So it is,
Well, first of all, would the videos be considered part of the record?
I think, no,
Because-
I think
Because that open,
minutes
that's when
are-
the
the minutes are a universal way.
he specifically unlocked the door.
No, he
It
couldn't.
won't unlock.
Oh, it won't unlock.
You can't unlock it.
Yeah, you
Gotcha.
can't unlock it. I tried after Steve left.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm surprised
I
they
tried.
haven't locked it on the other side. and
So I
made
was
us
gonna
stay
leave it
there.
ajar, but I saw it was gonna open up, so.
Gotcha.
Well, again, look, my own view is, if there's a conflict that exists in the homeowners act or even within our own bylaws, I would think council would want to alert us to that. I don't,
I hear you, Steve, but it hasn't happened in the past. And a great example of that is this voter sign issue.
Yeah.
That's clear violation of HOA, Maryland state law, and it's still in there.
And the
And so we can't,
committee person did not respond well and said they read it differently and, so
in other words,
council should be the one to say,
as far as I know, the way it works, it's what you described earlier, is that the president tasks the attorney to look into something and he looks into it and he provides back. In other words, the attorney is not sitting back there combing through our stuff
until it's charged.
and, comparing it to any updates to the HOA and then coming voluntarily forward and going, oh, by the way, this changed and you guys need to change your rules. Because if so, then that provision in our guidelines wouldn't be there anymore.
so let me just ask a question too. If the liaison takes a request back from us to the board president, does the president have sole decision-making ability to say, no, I don't think it's an issue, we're not going to forward it to council? Or if any one of us, or any of the committees ask their liaison to says that, hey, they're requesting that council look at this, shouldn't the president forward it? Or where does that, who, I don't know how to say that.
That's actually addressed in the resolution on committees.
Right.
There is a provision in there that says we can request counsel.
Right, but then,
Does the president,
then-
can the president override that?
right, I think that's how I'm trying to.
The way it's been described to me since I got on the board is that unless delegated to another board member, only the president charges the council with an appropriate task. I mean,
So-
that's sort of the way,
So then, but my question would be then, does the president get to decide what that person deems is important and enough to ask council to look at this? Or can they just say, no, this isn't a priority right now, we're not gonna do it, and it never gets to council? You know,
Yeah.
where is the responsibility, accountability that said, could any one of us then come back and say, well, we never heard back if council even looked at this?
well,
And then somebody will say, oh, well, it stopped here and never, ever even had a chance to get to council because,
my suggestion would be, whatever the committee decides is the finished document for this resolution, it seems to me it would be appropriate to include in the first reading that copy should be forwarded to council to review
Based on these concerns.
dealing with the
Right.
Homeowners Act, Homeowners Act and Ocean Pines bylaws.
Yeah,
I don't know at that point that the president would say, no, I'm not going to do that. But even if he does decide to do that, the committee has fulfilled its obligation.
Yeah.
May not make you happy, but the committee doesn't have any authority
right.
to say, you got to do this to council.
No,
And it has no authority to tell the board that either.
I get that. We're just advising.
Right.
Right.
Our role is to advise.
Right.
So keep the board out of trouble. To
Yeah,
try
we
to
should
move
have
forward.
reform.
We get into enough trouble on our own.
I know, I understand. I understand. That's
Look at
the
the
best
smile.
we can do. I'll tell you what we think the risks are, and maybe you should get council to look at
Yes.
it.
Yeah, and
I think that's where it ends.
Okay. So, B09, records retention policy. What I would like to do then is I would just like to tweak these notes a little bit
Okay.
with that language. And I also found some errors in here.
okay,
And then,
update questions,
and I'm gonna put a date on it. I'm gonna put a draft watermark on it,
okay.
right? And then I'll send this back out to everybody. And then if everybody's happy with it, you can give it to Steve. Steve can take it for first reading along with our questions.
I think we do know that we want the board to decide as to the records retention relating to association meetings or meetings of association members.
Right.
And I think we do know that we want decision on what should be retained as it applies to committees to lie with the committee. And I think as to see archive management, there should be a number 3 there, which basically says general manager shall ensure that any minutes retained are consistent with the Homeowners Act or something, because that may be in perpetuity.
Right.
I mean, I think, I thought that's what we had agreed to know. The issue of,
But I thought you said that was assumed throughout all our documents.
well, it's assumed we follow the Homeowners Act.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it's a conflict between a resolution and the Homeowners Act, you deal with what's in the Homeowners Act.
Correct.
I don't know. I mean, if you don't feel it's necessary, then don't put it in there. But I thought that was one of the things we had agreed on.
So you're saying that down there under archive management, a sentence that says, in accordance with,
Yeah.
Maryland's Homeowners Act.
Homeowners Association Act. Any records to be required for a period longer than 5, any minutes required to be held, because they don't deal with video.
under 3.
C3, yeah, 3C, new 3, yes.
Yeah.
You know, what What's a little unclear to me is whether we need to make a distinction between an advisory committee and a committee with assigned tasks. But I'm not sure we would get much further than 2 months anyway, so I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could make the case, and probably would say budget and finance, because their work extends out more than 2 months, should be allowed to save their videos longer. Potentially the elections committee as well.
Right.
But I don't know that.
On the other side, it's like you said, the minutes are what really stands out.
Yeah, and
And if you eliminate the video and somebody takes you into litigation, the video doesn't exist. They can only talk about what's in the minutes of the meeting.
that would be.
I mean,
Depends on how
there's
thorough
a
those are.
reason in some ways not to keep things
Yeah,
forever.
right. But I agree with all of that. But thinking about budget and finance in particular,
Mhm.
There might be a reason why the members should be able to avail themselves of the deliberations by the committee for that period of time when the budget was under consideration. But again, that's a separate issue that's sort of up to the board.
Yeah, and you could debate the other side. All the meetings are open. If you had an interest, why didn't you go to the meeting?
Absolutely. I get it.
Okay.
So I have no problem with killing 2 months.
Is it necessary under like 4 where I say, and I can't remember if this is my language or if this was from the original email where it says general manager or their designee. Isn't that assumed? Wouldn't it just be the general manager shall ensure that a log is maintained, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
he can.
We don't really, with the exception of, don't we, someplace, don't we designate an assistant secretary, which is usually a member of the staff?
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
But basically, all responsibility falls on the general manager.
Yeah, if he delegates, it's in his authority to
Right.
do what he does.
So I'm gonna change that language a little bit. Okay. So I have that for action B9.
Okay.
Woo.
All right, my friends. 3:10.
Isn't it good we're holding 2-week meetings rather than monthly? We
Good
still
thing.
can't get caught up.
It's a good thing.
So let me get this
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
one.
You probably got a whole lot more work done if I wouldn't come to these things.
All right, so there's still lots of stuff under new business and everything. We have the unnamed F resolution,
The
which
what?
I really find it hilarious that we.
That one we have
But
already.
I thought someone addressed that.
You have it addressed and that's ready to go. Is that Steve had that
I
on the
think
list?
Steve-
Well, here's, you sent me,
Mhm.
yes, I didn't see it till today. The documents that I said I don't have,
Right,
because I sent you an email.
yeah.
Okay. I got a real problem, and well, I've had a lot of problems, but this one,
The little desk.
this one is,
Okay, what,
I have no way to edit or print out a PDF. I can only because everything is on my Ocean Pines laptop.
gotcha.
So whatever you sent me, all these documents are PDFs. I need them to be Word. Now you've done a few for me. I can send you what she sent me. You can send them back to me as words if you want. That's fine. But I can't do anything with them.
Well,
I can't even print them out.
I think I only had those in PDF. so
the
I
only
don't
change
know
You can
what
that I
change the
see
PDF to Word.
If I don't.
I
have-
cannot do it on my,
Oh,
I have a very
right.
old
His-
Apple laptop
His
Oh,
is
okay.
due to the
that's given to me
laptop.
by Ocean Pines when I was elected.
Oh.
And I've gone to our IT guys and I said, I got a problem. And they said, we can't change it on this computer. You just can't.
Okay.
So, if Keith's okay with it, I'll send what you sent me. You can convert them to a Word document, and send it back to me.
Yeah, the only thing is, sometimes when I convert them to Word, they explode.
Formatting.
And,
Because they're formatted differently.
yeah, some of these original Word documents for some of these resolutions were created with columns. Like, for example, this is 2 columns. This is a column and this is a column,
Yeah,
right? And so when I go in and start editing it, Word wants to change the whole thing to a column and it divides the whole, and it just,
Right.
it explodes, turns into
Yeah.
a huge mess.
Right.
So I can, with the press of a button, I can turn it back into Word. It's just sometimes it takes a little monkey with it to,
Clear
well,
up.
look,
clean it up.
if it means it, I can wait a week or so.
Oh, just so, because I try to get that stuff back right away. And
Don't rush on my account.
but it's fine if you need. I've got a professional copy of Adobe, so I can pretty much convert anything.
So I will forward to you what
All those
Laura
charging
sent to me
documents and all that stuff.
yesterday
that-
and today.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay with that, Keith?
Yeah, I am. I'm not sure what you mean here by are you saying pending? Is that what that
No,
means?
she already, let me see what I wrote there.
What was that?
I can. Pending. Oh, okay, yeah. The S should come off and the typo was okay. And she took care of that. So the only thing that was that is get rid of the S.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
By the way, on this,
So this is for me to take back and to clean up the original
Well, yeah,
charging
and then
document.
what I guess the question is that on the agenda? That's the unnamed.
So I don't know if you
resolution.
saw this. This is the charging document for this weird
Yeah, I
F.
don't know if I have
For that resolution, that should be a policy and not a
is this the
resolution.
convenience fee resolution?
Yeah, I mean, that should be part of a policy. That doesn't belong as a resolution.
Well, I read, somebody sent out something that said that someone determined that this was intended to be a policy and it was just put it by mistake, or did I read that wrong?
I don't know. I didn't see that document,
Um,
but that was the question. Yeah, to me, it seemed like it'd be in the financial policy manual.
So, yeah.
Taking a
I
credit
remember
card,
reading
it
that.
should have nothing to do with a
Um,
new resolution.
I have too many tabs pulled up.
Do you still have that Ocean Pines website open, Laura? Can you go to the board of directors and just show this to Steve real quick so we understand what we're talking about here? And then go to the board. Go to the board.
Go to board.
Yeah.
And pull all the way down. And go to the,
Keep going, or,
keep
Book of
going, there you
resolutions.
are, the book of
Book of
resolutions.
resolutions, the first one.
First one,
Yeah,
open it
open
up.
that. Now scroll down to the Fs. Here's what we're talking about, Steve.
so the first one, it doesn't have. a
It
number.
is, this is what we're talking about, this weird file here. See, F1, F2, F3, F4, F5. What is that?
Well, that's what this is.
That's what that is, and that's what we're trying to get
Yeah,
straightened
it
out.
has no, so was that supposed to be a policy that went in the financial manual? Somebody posted it here by accident?
Yeah, I
Did
think
they
it was
intend for
posted,
this?
yeah,
Yeah, this is,
it doesn't
when I
meet the
click that
format,
link
it's,
for it, this is what pops up.
Mm-hmm.
When I click that link, just one page.
yeah,
Well, we just passed a resolution Saturday
About the 6%.
about, I want to call it a late fee, but I'm not sure that's the right
yeah,
term.
I was.
But if it's a delinquency payment, it's
Delinquency,
it's
you pay late.
6%. And that was done as an amendment to the DR. Yeah, that's the way it was written. I'm not sure if it's the same section.
It's a provision in the DR.
Right. And what they did was they set an interest rate to be paid for a delinquent payment in the and all they did was amend the DR to do it. That's what they did Saturday.
They didn't amend the DRs. The
Yeah.
DRs required the setting of the interest rate.
Which is what they did.
Right.
That's what they did. They
Yeah,
set the
so
rate
they
of
set the
6%.
At 6%.
That's
Right.
6%.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we did Saturday.
Right,
Right.
correct.
But the citation in the resolution was to the DRs. And I think it may be in this section.
Or you're not going to find that annual setting of the rate. You're not going to find it anywhere other than in the DRs.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is,
That was
should
the
this
charge.
even be, should this be folded into the DRs
Or
or?
it should be.
Well,
It doesn't belong as a resolution, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly
It,
what the topic is. It's something like a fee for.
It's if you're gonna pay
Here's
by
our
credit
thing,
card,
right.
we get to charge you.
right, and Maryland Homeowners Act says you can charge the fee for it. So, why is it even trying to be a resolution?
I think it probably was.
And it's not written like a
Probably
resolution.
not entered, but it's probably a board action as a result resolution. I don't want to get into
No,
how you create your motions or express your motions. In this case, apparently it was taken to the board as a resolution. I don't remember.
And the only reason,
Remember it at all. Because
the only reason it came up for us is because we
Right.
were just balancing
Yeah.
what was online against what our
Yeah.
tracker showed, and that file
the
showed.
file, it
This
never
mystery
existed. I
file.
never saw it until I ran across it.
So we just wanted the board to look at this, figure out what it is, and does it belong there? And if not, remove it.
And if it belongs there, then write it as a resolution,
Correct,
because it's only written as instructions.
correct.
It doesn't match any format.
Well, I guess I'm talking already. It doesn't belong there.
It doesn't belong there.
Doesn't
And that's what we're trying to,
On the book of resolutions.
Okay, so my next question is, if someone was to take the action that is in this resolution, would that be budget and finance? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, in
Which
order to have
committee?
the convenience fee, which is, I guess, what we want to do here, how do we accomplish that? That's what I'm trying to get at. I understand what you're saying. It shouldn't be a resolution.
Where does it go? Yeah.
it should be the financial policy.
Well, yeah, because this doesn't task anybody
No.
with collecting the convenience
No.
fee. It just says we authorize it and the membership should be aware of it.
Right.
So this doesn't say who's doing it or what's the foundational document.
It got there by accident.
We gotta separate where it belongs for how it's implemented.
Right,
Okay.
right.
It
We're
does-
trying to address where it belongs.
It does not belong, at least in this format, and I would say it doesn't belong at all
Right.
in the book of resolutions. That's one item. Now, how you communicate this to the membership, that's a different story, except that, again, I want to personally say it doesn't belong in the book of resolutions.
Right.
It certainly should belong on the invoice when they come out.
That's
for a week or month, whatever it's gonna be now.
That's where it belongs.
So yeah, the purpose of charging document was just to bring it to the board's attention.
That's where it belongs, Jim, because when you get it, you have a choice. Do you want to use your credit card or so? This is the fee associated with it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't belong in a resolution.
You know, I've known about this thing for over a year, and it was always number 11 on the top 10 list of things. Through the bylaws effort, and then after that, whatever happened, happened. But it does not belong. The point for this committee, in my opinion, okay, it doesn't belong in the book of resolutions.
Right.
And somebody needs to figure out how to do.
So that is
something.
what our charging document should be, to give to the
Yeah.
liaison, to say,
Right.
take it to the board and say, hey, did
Yeah.
you realize it's not in the proper place and doesn't need to be
Yeah.
here, shouldn't be here,
Look.
and then
Yeah, so I've
put it
got,
back on them.
Yeah,
I got
Laura
this for
fixed her
action.
name on that.
there's some red lines on here.
Right.
I'll go back and clean this up,
Yeah,
redistribute it. Once you're good with it, because you're signing it, right?
Right.
Give it back to Steve. Steve can take to the board.
And I would suggest at least that there should be some mention in there that it may be appropriate, it certainly should be appropriate that should be included on the assessment invoice.
right.
Right.
And perhaps it appropriately belongs in the financial policy manual or some other appropriate place within our various documents and manuals or something like that. But let them start to cogitate on that one.
Yeah, it should, yeah, I'll include that. That's a good, the assessment invoice in here, but that's basically what it says is, what is this? Why is it here? Is this your intent?
Yeah. And it may be, by the way, that, board will just kick this to John to find out what the history is.
Right.
He'll pull it up and figure it out or whatever.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it
John
doesn't
will know.
belong on the website in this category.
As an unnamed resolution, unnumbered.
Right, okay. Because it doesn't, it's really just, what's the word we want to use, advisory, right? I mean, that's what this is,
It's a shall.
It's a association policy,
Shall
procedure
be.
policy, whatever you want.
but it's
Yeah.
operational, not,
It's operational.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's operational. It's
Yeah.
details.
okay.
You're gonna charge a fee and this is how much it's gonna be.
Right.
Mhm.
If you choose this option of payment.
Right,
Okay.
all right, yeah.
That's another one on our new business list.
Right.
That'll teach us to try to reconcile between
Oh,
All right,
control
we should have
documents.
never opened that can of worms.
I know.
let's skip the,
Well, you started it.
I know, I'm sorry.
somebody,
Can I just touch on one thing that Jim had mentioned way back at the beginning? As to M01 and M02, what's the term used? Contact person, point person on the board is Colette, not anybody here. So, and we've done a first reading. So I don't know, frankly, what is necessary. I mean, I'm not sure you need to list it on the agenda because,
Well, yeah, if it's had a first reading. So let's see, what are we doing here? First reading,
and I
first
would-
reading. So yeah, why is it on our agenda, on our new business?
I think and M01 is in our matter anyway. And M02 is likely because now they're talking about general manager producing a manual for all and then some specific amenities as well.
Right.
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what it'll say, but for what it's worth, until I think the board comes back to us, you may just want
table those.
to just,
I don't
Well,
think
the
there's any
reason I
action.
have them
There is no action.
noted on here, even though Colette presented them to the M01 and M02 to the directors, is just really more for our governance document tracker.
Oh,
You know what I
I
mean?
know, I know what you're talking about. So it got put on here back when we said that the
When-
new liaison needs to get with the old liaison. That was months ago.
Right.
It became an action item because of that.
Right, and
Yes.
then I had updated on that, which board meeting, the January one, where we had the long list between you and Colette, of all of these things that were finally getting first readings or updates or whatever. And so we were just keeping track of them, and that's why I used the asterisks there to show which two that Colette had presented and read the first readings for. Mainly that was just so that we could go, okay, well, they've had a first reading and maybe ask in a month, whatever, has it had a second
right,
reading?
and so what I'm suggesting to you is I do not think it needs to be on the agenda.
For
I
us.
do think it needs to be in the governance.
It's on
Yes,
the
it's on here. It's on here. So we're tracking it. It's just not current
We don't
business
need
for
to put
us.
it on our
Right.
business.
That would be my suggestion.
And I think the same argument applies to
But
M9.
hold it, we're gonna get.
Go ahead.
I thought I had seen charging documents to this committee for M01 and M02 both. And I'm confused. I don't have it with me if there are. And I sort of recall, I watched the meetings on video, not video, but live board meetings. I've attended one recently. I sort of recall Doug Parks saying he wanted this committee to resolve any issues with the art committee regarding M01.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely true.
Okay. I don't want to stake too much on there being
No, you're right,
charging.
That part
documents
is
to this
correct.
committee, but
that is correct, hold on.
That's why we need you, Jim.
I'm gonna scratch two things off the list.
I'm trying.
Came back.
Well, you have encyclopedic knowledge.
Oh, not
Well,
really.
See, now that he's not responsible for taking the minutes, keeping track, following through, he can concentrate on what we agreed to
Well,
and
that's
forgot.
very different, husband. It's a whole different.
Well, I will say, because probably I'm the one who did it. You are right that as to M01, any issues that this committee has with M01 should be brought to ARC prior to the board considering it, because ARC is the committee charged with M01. I don't.
Well, I understood that slightly differently. I understood that ARC was charged with doing it. So if ARC comes back with red lines, that we would get a chance to look at those red lines to make sure that there
Right.
was no, some kind of conflict, related conflict.
Right.
So in other words, I thought we were in a holding pattern waiting on those red lines.
Well, the red lines are in M01
Pardon me?
Okay,
from
so
after the
I've got,
first reading.
here's the charging documents for, M01 that I have up on the screen. Request for performance by the bylaws and resolutions. We did it on 1/28/23. Request to the board. The board requests that the bylaws and resolution advisory committee to, so that's. And then I found the charging document for M02.
I'm looking at, so you included this in our package. So we actually have the red lines in our package here.
Yes.
So we want to,
And so I've got those up here,
there's
which,
quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that has-
I did that charging document. If I'm not mistaken.
right, yeah.
Yeah, so as to N01, I think that's correct.
So
N02,
That one is the one that's on hold.
well, yeah, because the whole the whole way of approaching that issue is apparently changing. I haven't seen anything yet, but that's what I'm told.
It's changing by the board or by the charging.
Well, the board is going to, president of the board has told the general manager to prepare a manual,
Oh, okay.
which I'm assuming it is doing. We may have it by March, I don't know. I'm not quite sure where it is in the mix. At that point, whatever is in M02 will be either subsumed into the manual or M02 will change substantially what we have right now. I'm not sure which it will be, because we haven't seen what the general manager has drafted. So,
So right now for M02, there's not action for us.
right, I think again, I think what I said before is as to M02 is correct. You can take it off the agenda. You probably should leave it in the governance document.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, I got that on the government.
M01,
These have a lot of red lines to look at.
you guys have to.
And just remind me real quick, the reason we're updating M01 is because we updated the bylaws, right? And M0, after we changed the bylaws with regard to this, they didn't match.
Well, M01's the legislation.
Yeah, it's the change in the Homeowners Act, which gave or stipulated, for lack of a better term, an appeals procedure or policy requirement
Right.
for ARC, you know, for architectural questions and stuff like that. That's the shorthand.
Well, I think what the situation is that the liaison to the committee has indicated that M02 is almost certainly going to be revised from what red line you have now.
Right.
And to proceed to look at the red line and comment on it would not be productive. That's
Right.
my understanding. That's my understanding.
For two,
What
for
Steve.
MO2.
You said it much better than I did, yes.
But there is no such indication that M01 is being rewritten by anybody or updated, the draft is being updated by anybody.
Right.
Yeah, we have,
It's eligible to go to second reading.
I have
Right.
M01
If
up
the
there.
board wants to.
Well, that's what all this is. This is
Yeah.
01.
yeah.
Yeah, this
Did you
one-
read it?
Keep scrolling. Keep
Did you read
scrolling.
it?
I did not. Look at all
Oh,
this.
okay. I read
It's
it.
a lot, yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I came the other night. It was nighttime reading.
What
But the
this-
appeal
what good-
process,
Okay, now there is a charging document from the board to this committee for M01, is that correct?
I think, yeah, I
That's
think I
correct.
I
read it.
think you just had it up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I
Right.
think I read it.
What does that say?
It says that
It's
the
up here.
board wants this committee to review M01, to make sure it's consistent with our policy, our governing documents. And any problem in identifying inconsistency should be notified to go to ARC,
To go back to ARC with
go
those
back to
concerns.
ARC with the
Right.
concerns that this committee has raised prior to it getting to the board. The board doesn't want to have to
Keep sending things out, right?
litigate between the two committees. So if there's a problem, you all need to go over to ARC and say, we think this is an issue. How do you want to address it? And let go
Okay,
from there.
is it accurate to say it kind of this way? The initiative is on this committee
Yes,
to go to ARC, and if ARC doesn't come back and say, hey, you're gonna make any comments or not, because we're gonna go to ask for a second reading.
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's fair.
That's a
My,
not a very smooth way to say
yes,
things.
I think that's correct. And I mean, I will let Colette know that you'll get to it today, you'll get to it at your next meeting. And
Right.
from there.
Mhm.
So she
All right,
doesn't
so-
sort of jump the gun.
We're taking M02 off the agenda.
Right.
We're leaving M01 on the agenda,
for next meeting,
right?
because nobody's
Because I
had
need to
time
read.
to read.
I have not read this.
I don't even
Part
think
of
I
it
printed
looks,
it.
I'm not sure of conflict, but the process sounds good. Whether or not we've covered all the bases, I gotta go look at.
That's a lot.
But
You
yeah,
know, I used to get paid to sit in these meetings.
I never got paid for anything. I'm a chronic
Well,
volunteer.
Jim used to get paid as chairperson. Now he doesn't even get paid as.
Party coming up here soon for you guys.
You're gonna be there, aren't you?
All right,
Why not?
so
Yeah, I'm not.
Hey.
No, no, no. no.
Yeah, come on.
search committee part, do we want to address that?
Search committee.
The M09, didn't somebody ask me,
Well,
I do.
right?
M09.
Because
We-
the candidate process part, and I have it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Needs to be looked at because, and
We have a-
we know the election committee is still working on updating and getting themselves ready for the next election cycle, next process. But one of the biggest things out of that is the actual application
Mhm.
that needs to be ready, approved, and all of that. So I think I don't know if we're just bringing attention to it or, we can move it to the March 10th meeting, obviously, but, the longer
It
the
looks,
longer some of these election type questions, or policies or documents, whatever it goes, the closer we're gonna get bumped into the actual election process.
what is our action? Do we have a charging document on that?
no, it-
Yes, there's an old,
I think there
it's
is.
had a first reading, right?
no.
Huh?
No,
Oh, it
it's
has?
not on M09.
no, I'm looking at, I'm just looking at the notes on my tracker and it's,
There is a charging document that goes back to June 10th.
22.
This had to do whether or not we should even have a search committee?
No, no, no.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
We tried to eliminate that.
We need to find that.
There are
charging document.
a number of points in the current M09 that are either questionable or vary from the bylaws, the current new bylaws.
Because the bylaws change.
Yeah, the bylaw. And some of them are not necessarily relevant if we don't have a search committee. The resolution says that the search committee is to be appointed by March 1st, February 24th. So whatever is in, and I can point out a couple of things, in the N09 dealing with whatever a search committee does and when it's appointed and how many are on the committee and whether it varies from the bylaws can be disregarded if we're gonna have a search committee. I'm making it a little bit sarcastically, to be frank with you. But there are issues that need to be considered with the application itself. And whether or not the application questions on there, in particular, some that are not really optional anymore. And there's one that doesn't match the bylaws, and that has to do with the, let's say, criminal conviction.
Criminal history, something, yeah.
It's got 10 years in the questionnaire, it's 5 years in the bylaws. The people talking on social media about being candidates for the applicants for candidacy on the board of directors, and the application is on the website. No reason why they couldn't print it out today and send it in. It's that kind of thing. If you look through here, there's other things in here that, well, there is in fact a conflict within the bylaws itself. One section says that the search committee will take the applications to the secretary, and the other next paragraph, or not paragraph, the subsection says they all go to the secretary or assistant secretary, one or the other. You can't do both. With different dates, as a matter of fact. Anyway, the point is, the resolution needs to be looked at, in particular the application form, to make sure we're ready to go with it.
I think so.
Yeah. Otherwise, we run the risk of another one of these glitches in our election process that we don't really want after the last couple of years.
Right.
We don't want it anytime, I'm sure.
All right, so this one that I
But you
have
don't need
up-
it this year for sure.
We don't want to do it again, so to speak.
Can I just ask, is this something that bylaws committee has to do, or we have to inform the elections committee that they?
The assignment for doing this stuff should be the search committee.
Of which there is none.
Which doesn't exist.
Now, I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here. But we have this appointment by March 1st provision. Some time ago, the resolution was changed so that there was not some more or less automatic disbanding of the search committee after it sent in its report. The search committee stayed in place until the next search committee was appointed. And the real reason for that is if there's something to do with the resolution, the search committee stayed in place and did it. So, but right now the question is, okay, if this thing's got to be updated now or as soon as possible, who's going to do it? I don't think it should be this committee. Personally, don't think it should be this committee. I got some ideas as to who, but I'll try to be more discreet this time.
Well, wasn't our selection either give it to the election committee or give it to the communications committee,
Well,
and neither of them wanted it.
No, that's right.
Neither of them wanted to accept it.
Right. Communications wanted to stay in the publicizing of the election, of the application, and the elections committee properly said, we want to stay out of it. We just want to stay in
I do
elections.
recall that
Because
discussion.
our job is only to run the election.
Right,
Right.
correct.
So,
To stay neutral in that sense, then. They didn't want to be part of the application process and doing the validating.
Now, when I was chair of the committee at the meetings on the bylaws, put it to the
He rewrote the whole damn form.
Well, no, we put it to the board of
And
directors.
then the board changed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, when I submitted, it got changed.
I'm not talking about the resolution, the resolution of the form right now.
Yeah.
This committee put it directly to the board of directors. What do you want? You want to get rid of it, or do you want to keep it? And the board said, we're gonna keep it in the bylaws.
Keep the form in the bylaw.
The search committee.
Yeah.
The search.
Search committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, but I remember I sort of got spanked for that.
Therefore, you
Well,
know,
because I mean, the search committee said, we don't see any reason why we should exist. And
That's right.
When I was on the committee, that's what I said. And Colette sort of spanked me and said, no, the board feels it should. We're gonna give them new duties and all this other stuff. But right now, we don't have a search committee.
And nobody's been advertising
And-
for a search committee either.
and the
You
worst
notice
thing
in any
is,
of the
you got an
publications,
application that.
You know, that,
That's right.
Aquatics needs, committee members. There has been nothing, zero communication
Okay.
about a search committee needing
And-
members.
That's exactly right.
Well,
I didn't even think about that.
the one thing they should do is
Because
pull
every
down
time
this
they advertise
application
for an
off the
upcoming
internet
meeting,
because it's wrong.
They put which committees still need members, and search has not been on there for at least a year.
Right.
You know what
Yeah, you're-
what I've just
you're
heard
right.
is
They
Jim
should
is
pull
telling
this
us we need to
application down.
act quickly.
Because this is wrong.
I don't want to say, we say we, I'm not we.
He's not part of a committee.
I understand. I understand. I meant we need to act more quickly than tomorrow.
Could come kind of close to saying that, yeah. Someone in the association needs to decide what to do about this resolution with regard to the upcoming candidate application
Right.
and election process.
Because that election process is just around the corner.
Yes.
And step
And-
one, to Bob's
But
point,
the election,
is that form needs to be pulled
That
off
form
the
should be
internet.
pulled off the
because it
internet.
doesn't
Nobody
comply
should
with the
fill out a
bylaws.
form that's wrong.
right,
And as a matter of fact, that was done last year when this form
right.
was in process. There was
Right.
no form, the old form,
There's no new
It's
one
not-
dated election 2023. And
What's on there now, if you go look at it? This one, I believe.
what's in the resolution.
It is, okay, it's the attachment B, so it should be taken off.
In the resolution.
where is it?
Actually, the resolution should be pulled off until till you get the thing straightened out, it's wrong.
I think if you go down the board of directors page, you'll find an where you can click on an application.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there is one. Yeah, you're
Right,
right.
I think
I
it's-
haven't clicked on it, but I think you're right. All the way to the bottom.
Go,
it kind of goes slowly along. I think you'll find it somewhere.
There you go.
there you go. That should be taken down.
Click here to down.
If you click on that, it should come up the application form.
There it is.
Well, you gotta keep going. That's the prologue, so to speak.
Keep
There you
going.
go.
There you go.
Now you're in. the
Number
actual
3.
Application.
But there's no date on there saying that it's for this current year either. There's no date saying that it's not. And that could be a problem too, though, you know? 'Cause-
Well, the idea is not to have a new form every year, it's just to
Right,
use the same
right.
form, but that is a new form. That's not the old form. That is not specifically the one that
We
we
do.
submitted because the board did make changes to it. But that form has, a couple of the dates are wrong according to the bylaws.
Right.
I think it's down below. So in other words, if people are gonna click on this in order to apply, that link
That
needs to be.
particular part there is the one that's of the biggest concern, I think. The questions.
Oh, roll back.
Yeah.
Roll
Up
back
here.
up, right here?
Those are
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, within the past 10 years.
They're no longer optional. Several of those are picked up directly in the
Bylaws.
Right, that's right. Well, and some of them weren't optional then.
Right.
The board changed this to make them optional, and then when they made the changes, they didn't comply with the bylaws. And it
And
was-
our recommendations disappeared.
Yeah, well,
We tried to, I remember pushing back on that and said, this is not in accordance with the bylaws. Well, that's the way it's gonna be, and it went forward. So this was wrong last year too.
How do we send this back to the board with the charging document?
A new one.
Well, we have a charging document.
We take the one that's back from June 10th if you wanted to. I don't know if you want to update it
Right.
or not.
But more quickly than that, because that could take,
Right.
that might not even get on this agenda for the upcoming ones.
Right,
To
and
your
that,
point.
and that meeting is what,
But
March
how
18th?
can you have an application out that is in conflict with the bylaws?
Well, I think that's where somebody who's got some oomph would have to go to somebody and say, I think we need to disable this link for
Maybe,
this form.
maybe to the president,
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he's the only guy that can do it.
I'm not discouraging taking the form down, but as soon as you do, that's going to,
That would be
Because then
the
they're gonna want a
right thing.
replacement.
it's going to raise some
Yeah.
question.
But why have a bad form up?
I'm not,
No.
I'm just saying,
I mean,
be prepared for some publicity with that form coming down.
Yeah.
Well, we're on a video right
there's,
now.
there's really nothing wrong with saying you're reformatting or
right,
updating
and
a
making sure it's
form,
current.
and we'll
right.
get it there as soon as possible, for Christ's sake.
We would just need to have it updated and back up there based on the
Very
timeline
quickly.
when they announce
Or-
and say,
Put something across
Well,
that says
looking
new
for
form
candidates.
pending.
yeah,
Remember, this is in a resolution, which has a resolution amendment process.
Mhm.
First reading goes to a regular
Oh.
board meeting.
Right,
And you can turn right around and have a special meeting and approve
a second reading.
right,
a
that's the second reading.
Yes, you do it adjourn one meeting and convene the next one if you have to.
It's too bad we don't have a provision in our process that says if we're just making administrative corrections to comply with the bylaws, that it doesn't have to go through all that.
You guys can consider.
I'm not doing that.
No, thank you.
I'll have to look.
That ain't coming for me.
All
My
right.
memory is not, I'm not as proficient.
So where are we going with this issue?
So what are we gonna do, because you're down to three?
Well, it sounds to me like-
It's overtime.
Do we have a copy of this charging document?
Um,
So if not, that's the action. The action is dig up the old charging document.
I don't,
There's really two actions. There's like an informal action that Steve's gonna go talk to somebody about. What do we want to do with this form online?
Doug, because the problem is you got a form that's not consistent with the bylaws and you have no committee charged with addressing this.
Right.
So,
And so meantime,
and we're not the committee.
no,
well, we could end up getting charged with it. That's what I'm saying. We need to find this old charging document, right?
I'm looking for M09, right?
Well, don't find it now because then we got to do something with
I
it.
know,
Make
but
that
I'm
as
just,
an action to do later.
but I have to
next
make sure I
meeting.
know what I'm writing down,
Oh, gotcha.
right?
Our
I'm
next
writing
You're
down
right. Yeah,
a
you're
charging
gonna
document
find the
for-
charging document. When did you say it was? June? June for M09. There you go.
Look,
Okey dokey, I'll make a copy of that one and send it out to everybody.
It wouldn't be for
I was-
Jim,
I
we'd
may
have
or
missed
may
it.
not
it
have it
doesn't
on
exist
here.
right now. I can't, what do we call it?
do you have a whole room devoted to this at your house?
No, we gave,
He has a bigger desk.
It's not the communication committee, it's not the elections committee, what's the other committee? We haven't even advertised an opening yet. What's that, which committee is that?
So
Search?
Search committee.
Search.
Steve, I looked recently, but there are two people listed as being on the committee.
On search?
On search, yeah. Laura, can you go back and?
Yeah, go back and open it up. Committees.
yep,
Is the
All right.
search committee for
I
the
actually do have,
GM or
you
for
can have
board
that
of
back.
directors, or
I
what's the
did
search
find
committee
it.
for?
For candidates for the board of directors.
Okay, so I did find the charging document, because I had already actually crossed out and
I'll look
put
at
my
that.
name in there.
Okay,
I just
now-
didn't have it saved as a PDF to pull up.
Send that to me as a Word document.
Okay, there you go.
All right, so what am I
Go
looking for?
to, go back to committees.
Committee?
Go up to the top, departments, go down to committees, now go down. No, go back to committees. Now, it's under the election.
There should be search there somewhere.
There should be a certain.
I think you missed. Go back up to the departments.
It is, it is. It
Is that
on
the committee
department.
No, that's not the committee list.
That's,
Oh,
Go back.
All right,
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go. Committees.
go down to committees. Now swing over.
No,
Whoops.
no.
Okay.
go back and try it
I
again.
did,
No.
there you go. You're all
Oh,
right.
you don't want search? What did
All right,
you-
now go down to members.
Wait a minute. Tell me again slowly,
Scroll down.
what am I looking?
Let's scroll down.
Scroll down, members of the committee. Current members.
Okay, there you go.
All right, now,
There's two. And then Stuart.
there's a couple of things about that. One, there are no term like what they have shown there, term expire. I can't read it from here.
The
Yeah,
term
it
is
says
February
Andy
24.
is expiring.
And March 25.
2024
It's a-
and one in
It's
2025.
an annual appointment, so you don't have terms that expire.
Oh,
But whether or not those two people
I'm still
still
interested.
expect to be on a search committee is open to question.
Right.
But the bylaws say that the committee ranges from 3 to 5. If those two people are still actively interested in being on a search committee, you need one more person.
Right.
But again, as Laura said, there's absolutely nothing been done.
Right.
No
No
public
advertising.
information whatsoever about there being a search committee to be appointed, and we need a
For the
member or
election process,
members.
yeah. Mhm.
Same problem as last year and the year before.
Right, yeah, it's a repetitive problem. Yeah.
I haven't seen either of those names.
Hence the
on social
question,
media.
why do we have one?
Well, we tried,
But the committee itself decided it didn't want to be, didn't want to
Maybe.
be in existence.
Right.
Colette
Yeah, but
was
the
the right
board said
person to
that-
ask. She wants the one to keep it.
The, hi,
Yeah, but
The-
the board said
there's a
a search committee, and that's why. it's-
Right, right, that's what, when I was on this committee, I said, well, I don't quite understand this, the search committee said, we don't think we should exist.
Because
To me, well, I think at the time it was because there was no need for them, right? And there were more than enough candidates for the vacancies. And I have at least
They're coming to you.
double the number of vacancies running for the board. So in other words, if there were two vacancies, at least 4 candidates. And we had made that, and their view was it was unnecessary.
Search committee, and yet we have a board of elections, so.
But now you don't even have an application for anybody to apply.
We don't have a
You-
committee
just-
to address the application.
What, Augie?
looking on the website, it looked like there's a 2022 search committee annual report that lists 4 members of the committee.
2022.
Where'd you find that?
It's on the same webpage. If you go to committee agendas and reports.
Look at that.
Yeah, Tom, that's right. Tom was last year's chairman. That's correct.
Right.
If reappointed, term ends 2024, so technically.
If reappointed.
He's not in the election.
If reappointed.
So
Right, so yeah, so now, yeah.
Okay, so what's the action for us?
And if there's another person on here.
I don't see an action. You can't do anything.
Well, the action would be. that the-
I got to contact Doug.
Third one down.
Okay.
The liaison
Um,
as the ball.
Yeah, I got to contact Doug. Because he's got to make a decision.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have a search committee. Last year, the elections committee, communications committee didn't want to be involved. We have conflicts with the bylaws that recently were enacted. What are we supposed to, who's supposed to address this? I mean, it's really not us unless he says to us, go take care of it. To remove the conflicts with the bylaws. That would be his justification for having us do it. Right?
Yeah, it's a reasonable justification.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we exist. But I don't think we can do it on our own. That would be my feeling.
Yeah, I agree.
You're talking about the form we can't do on our own, but if Doug delegates it, we can.
Yeah, if he
Problem
were to
is-
say to me, you know, cut a charging document to the bylaws committee to
Charging document.
address the discrepancies between the recently passed bylaws and the current form, then I think we could do it. But I don't think we have the authority on our own to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Plus,
Augie?
we're supposed to look for errors, and if we're generating the document, how do we check for our own errors?
Yeah.
Oh, this is from us to the board.
Right.
That's us charging the board.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, so we're good. The board needs to answer that charging document.
Well, that's- I'm
You
gonna
got your
send, I'm
hand
gonna
up?
send an email to Doug.
There we go. Okay, so there's our
One
action.
thing's in with Doug.
Sorry,
He
You
gets
guys,
paid.
I already said what I was gonna say about that.
Oh, okay. All right,
Okay, so I'm just gonna update my.
okay, so
Okay.
that'll, is there,
Well, so the status still stands, because my status was liaison to re-engage with the board. So my status still
Change the
stands.
date. Change the date.
Today's date, that's right. We came
Today's
full
date.
circle on that, baby.
yeah.
Now,
Next meeting is,
Just a
is there
minute.
anything on the governance document that you want to go over?
is there anything on there that we need to do now?
Let me just poke through it real quick.
When you'll probably do this, I just want to hear you say you do it. When you're setting up the agenda, you usually put the things that are most,
Pressing first?
yes,
Mhm.
okay.
So B01, and again, I gave you copies what I passed out today. So I've got, the most recent status is second reading complete, and it was approved. So I signed that one off. B02, this is one that you're bringing before the board. You said that earlier.
Right.
B03, going back for a new first reading. We talked about that earlier.
Right.
B05, you're bringing before the board. 6, you're bringing before the board.
Right.
7, what did you say? You're gonna make a motion to approve.
Right.
I think 9, I think that status stands. We reviewed the made minor changes, after which C4 liaison submit to board for review. Record retention, M09. So yeah, so M09 is
You're gonna update
me
that.
tweaking it, sending back out, and then you're gonna take it to the board. So that basically still stands, which is.
Well, I'll take it back to the board if the committee tells me to. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to go through the tweaks, make sure you're okay with it.
Right. He's
Okay.
gonna send it out. We're gonna look at it. If we all agree, then
Right.
she'll forward,
I'm with you.
sign it and forward it to you.
Yes,
She bring the chair.
tweak, okay?
Board chair.
C1. Charging document created to ask about annual resolution review inclusion in the annual report. I don't think we've worked on C1 yet, have we?
No.
No, we
started
haven't done that yet, but
Okay,
we
we
need to.
haven't worked on C9, so that stands. Charge document board. We haven't worked on F1. F3, you're gonna create a motion to approve.
Right.
F4, still on hold. M1, we're gonna review those red lines that we talked about.
Right.
M2, we're on hold. Because the first reading's at the board, so this is for the board's action. M5, he's gonna make a motion to approve. M6, the current, it's on hold. M7's on hold. And M8 was approved on 2/18. Second reading was complete, was approved, so I signed that one off. And then M9, liaison to go back to the board with the charging document. With the charging document for discussion.
We're joking, who's what calling them, going, it's 4 o'clock. You
Yeah, I know.
be home by 4.
I said I'd be home.
I probably jinxed us because I said the same thing to
And
my
these are
husband.
the
Oh, we should be home by 4.
Well, that's what I said.
You know?
And these are the extra meetings.
I know.
I
You
said
bet.
it.
I get signed up. Don't you have to do that?
So you want to
Okay.
scratch that?
Yeah, it's just right to the name. I think, Jim. Anybody-
Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
Second,
And recall that our next meeting is March 10th,
yes.
okay? After that, we are not scheduled to meet again until the 31st. That, we're still
Right.
good for that?
Yes.
And then from the 31st, we don't meet again until May. Because the 31st is taking our April meeting.
Yes,
Right.
yes, that's
Okay.
right.
Because that
Yeah,
conflicts
so I
with
just wanted to
Easter.
Throw that out there. I mean, I'd be happy to go back to the once a month and not every 2 weeks also, but, so Anyone opposed to adjourning at 4:02 PM? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, we are adjourned at 4:02 PM.
Going on mute.